Let's go ahead and start, Cassie.
Just one sec. All right, Mayor.
Okay. On behalf of the City Council and the staff of Syracuse City, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's special meeting and a work session. You'll see we have kind of an urgent need within the city tonight, and so we're going to take care of that first. But this meeting is going to be held electronically in accordance with House Bill 5002 of the Open and Public Meetings Act amendment, signed into law on June 25th of 2020, pursuant to written determination of the mayor, finding that conducting the meeting with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present due to the infections and potential dangerous nature of COVID-19 virus. Public meetings will also be held electronically for the next 30 days. The YouTube live stream of the meeting can be found at the following link, and you can find that link if you go to the city's website. And hopefully the people in Jordan's neighborhood have found a way to link in. We understand that some of our Xfinity people are down at the present time, so we welcome them when they can join us, or if they found a way to join us. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I've asked Councilmember Bingham if she would lead us in prayer, and then Councilmember Jordan if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we are thankful for this day to come together and discuss the business needs and pressing needs of our city. And we are thankful to serve here in such a beautiful town, such a beautiful state. We're grateful for this time of year. We pray for the moisture that we so desperately need, that we will start an increase in rainfall very soon so that we can take care of the needs that we have and fill our reservoirs. We're thankful for the people who work so hard in our behalf to keep us safe and watched over, especially all of our emergency and staff members who do so much in our behalf. We're thankful that our city runs so well and there are so many competent people in charge and doing their best every day. We're thankful for the great citizens of this city, and we're thankful for those who take care of each other and their neighbors' needs. We pray for civility to be with us this evening, and that we will all have good conversations that are productive and that resolve issues. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 All right, let's, if I could ask everyone to stand and face the flag. There's one presented on the screen, and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa and Jordan. I appreciate that. For those who are regular attenders here, you'll recognize that we're missing Councilmember Teague. He's had a family emergency and won't be joining us tonight, so we would like to excuse him, but we do have a quorum present. Council, I'd appreciate a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
I hear Dave and I heard Lisa. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We now would like to have a discussion. We've talked about this a couple of times before, and this situation with Mr. Jakes needing culinary water, his well having dried up this year with the drought. So let's begin this. Robert, is this Robert or Paul?
I am on, yeah.
Okay,
This is
Robert. Robert, let's bring the residents up to date on what we're talking about.
Sure. So Jared Jakes brought in a request for connecting to the city's culinary water system. This is located at 3263 West, 2700 South. He is technically in the county, but he's close enough to Syracuse City. well, he's right along 2700. Just anyway, we have a culinary main that runs right down 2700 South, right in front of his home, and several others there in the county. All of the homes have been connected to the main except just a few, and some of them we've taken care of with approving requests. And besides this one, there's just one other that is not connected, one other existing home. So, but Mr. Jakes came in and asked for a connection because he did have a well that was exclusively serving his home for indoor culinary water needs. That well has gone dry. He is just temporarily bringing water into the house for now, and has asked if he can be connected to our culinary water system.
Yeah, I'll just start and say that we've done this before, and it's we've hooked up almost everybody in the same situation. Well, I would just make a motion to approve.
Well, we had this assigned to Councilwoman Bingham. Do you have anything else you want to add to that, Lisa?
No, we actually did discuss this last time, and especially with their well failing at this time, we wouldn't want anyone to ever be without culinary water. It seems like such a simple fix as well, with the road having the water main right there in front of them. So I'd like to just make a motion that we approve this request.
Okay, Dave, can I take yours as a second?
Sure.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, council?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Cassie, that's four unanimous votes. Now, council, I would take a motion to recess and reconvene in city council workshop.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Second by Jordan. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, now we are in work session. Let's go to the agenda that is printed for that work session. There's no need to call to order because I have called the meeting to order. We're at public comment. Individuals wishing to provide public comment may do so by submitting an email to the city recorder, Cassie Brown, and her email address is there by 5 p.m. on September 28th. Comments should be submitted by the deadline and will be read for the record of the meeting. So let's begin there. Let's begin with those that have sent emails to Cassie. Cassie, do you want to read through those?
Yes. So the first email is from Christy Ormsby. She says, my name is Christy Ormsby. I live on 1550 West, very near the proposed mixed-use development site. I share with my neighbors heavy concerns with the proposed development as it currently stands, the foremost being the proposed hotel site directly adjacent to two schools. This may be the worst possible location for a hotel. It is, however, the perfect place for pedophilia and other criminal activity. Prospective criminals can easily and comfortably watch for patterns of children who walk home alone, sift out the vulnerable, and be able to quickly take them back to their rooms or simply go to another location. For the revenue, there are some trades in return. The message that Syracuse is not a place for families, not to mention the actual safety of students. If any youth is harmed in any way because of the hotel, I do not think people will feel the revenue was worth it. I have been informed that the hotel itself is fairly non-negotiable. If that is the unfortunate case, we feel the following stipulations are the bare minimum to be followed. 1, the hotel must be closely set against I-93. This will put it as far from the schools as possible, as well as make the movements of the patrons slightly more visible. The hotel, in its current proposed location off of 300 East, is dangerously more secluded and closer to the schools. Very high fences and very high trees surrounding the hotel. No windows that would look out over the schoolyard. These same stipulations were met by a builder in a similar situation. Article link is posted below. Sorry, that was for bullet point number 2. Number 3, background check on anyone staying for 2 or more weeks. Number 4, road outlets as far away from 1550 West as possible. 5, extensive training of hotel staff to look for signs of suspicious behavior and what to do if they find it. 6, letters sent to the schools and parents reminding them to practice safety skills, i.e. never approach strangers or let them approach you. Vary your walking path if you feel you are being scouted. Scream and run in the opposite direction if any danger is felt. and a very strong encouragement for parents to physically drop off and pick up their child at in person and avoid walking home alone, etc. Parents deserve to know what kind of dangers their students may face. Please contact me for any reason in regards to this proposal. This is a serious issue. Please plan accordingly. Thank you for the time and effort you have put forth on this project. We know that you care for our children and teenagers greatly and look forward to seeing things progress in this regard. Okay. Number 2 is from Katie Blackburn. She says, my name is Katie Blackburn and I'm a member of the BMX community. I would like to voice my support for building the BMX track at the regional park location. My family started racing at Legacy BMX this summer. Through our participation, my kids have learned many things. They have learned that through hard work and determination, they can accomplish personal goals. They've discovered that winning isn't everything and that doing your personal best is important. After many falls and losses, they have learned to never give up. They've made friends and they cheer on and encourage to do their best. They've really become a part of this community. When we first started, we thought we might go to the track once or twice, maybe for the whole summer. Now we are hooked and will continue to ride as long as we are able. Because of this, we would really like to have a high quality BMX track in Davis County. As our kids advance in the sport, I would like them to be able to participate in the big state and national races at their home track, where they will be most comfortable and have the most support. We encourage the council to vote for the highest quality track possible. Having a track with the best amenities is important to us because we spend so much time there. On practice nights, we spend around 2.5 hours at the track. Our schedule requires us to get dinner near the track. On race nights, we generally bring 3 to 10 additional spectators with us. We usually make a night of it since we know we will be at the track for about 4 hours. We meet early, we get dinner, we go for dessert afterward. At Legacy BMX, they had an average of 30 participants in practice and about 60 on race nights. All of these additional people and activities will bring added revenue to Syracuse. I believe the BMX track will be a great attraction to the regional park and will attract more people to the sport by being centrally located. I also think it will be helpful to be able to share the amenities with the park. I encourage the council to move forward with developing the BMX track as quickly as possible so that we will be able to start our season with Antelope BMX next summer. Thank you. Okay, number 3 is from Desiree Western. Good day. I am a Syracuse City resident living in the Ivory Homes Monterey Estates neighborhood. Like many in the area, my son attends SAA North. I have a vested interest in the safety and continuity of the neighborhood and wish to share my thoughts below regarding the proposed Monterey West development. A hotel in such close proximity to both an elementary and high school is not a welcome idea. If Syracuse City does indeed have interest in a hotel within city limits, I can think of multiple alternate sites that make more sense. East of the liquor store on the south side of Antelope Drive, for one example. Why does the builder not plan for additional single-family residences instead of a hotel? I would appreciate further discussion surrounding alternatives to the hotel. The current conceptual landscape plan provided by the developer includes 2 outlets from the parking lots, one east-west on 1550 West and one north-south near the mortuary. For the sheer volume of residents this development potentially houses, getting cars in and out of these lots will certainly be problematic. I would like to see firm plans that allow additional east-west roads out of Monterey West to 2000 West and the road south of the mortuary continued east-west to 2000 West. I would prefer the Monterey West project be put on hold until UDOT could advise on next best steps for the traffic flow on the entire undeveloped lot, not just the proposed Monterey West development. I would hate for future residents to unwittingly reside in an area that cannot accommodate normal flow of traffic. Obviously, traffic because of SAA is a huge factor with the neighborhood, so any measures offered up to address this with Monterey West would gain significant favor with current residents. Secondary water access, availability, pressure is a huge concern and stressor for the existing Monterey Estates residents. Will Monterey West be connected to the current Weber water secondary lines? There is not enough secondary water to go around currently, so adding open play areas and courtyards though a lovely idea, and other green space simply cannot be accommodated by the secondary water system. Thank you, Desiree Western. Okay, number 4 is from Emily Fanau. Dear City Council members, I'm a resident of Monterey Estates neighborhood and I live on 1550 West, the street where the proposed Monterey West development will be built. I would like to address 4 areas of concern relating to the proposed development. First is the traffic and safety component. Second is how the Syracuse Arts Academy current pickup routine and parking lot layout play a part in the traffic and safety problem. Third are concerns with the hotel component. And fourth are high density housing concerns. First, I have been vocal with the City Council in the past about looking for solutions to the myriad of traffic concerns that are currently a problem and will only be compounded by any development that happens on the 1550 West, 300 South property. I submitted several suggestions to the council during the last development proposal of townhomes with hopes to improve traffic conditions in this area. The developer for the current proposal, Monterey West, has been very proactive about approaching us and implementing various traffic and safety measures into their plans to resolve the current issues. These include 90-minute parking signs along the west side of 1550 West. This will help alleviate constant around-the-clock on-street parking that would likely happen with the development of Monterey West. On-street parking impedes visibility for drivers on 1550 West, which is a hazard, especially right next to a school. A crosswalk from Syracuse Arts Academy across 1550 West. This will help alleviate the children and parents who currently dart across the road at any given moment during the busy school pickup hours, all while vehicles are driving up and down, a number of which perform U-turns to head back into the neighborhood. 3, a flashing crosswalk sign to alert drivers to watch, slow down, and stop for crossers. 4, a 4-way stop sign at 1550 West and 450 South, which will help to slow speeders that consistently speed on 1550 West. Speeding happens at all times of the day, but becomes more perilous during school pickup hours. 1550 West has become a route for people to cut through, perhaps to avoid going on 2000 West or 1000 West, and there is consistent daily speeding on 1550 West. Neighbors with kids, including myself, are afraid to have kids outside on the street at all because of the speeding on 1550 West, all along 1550 West, and even around the corner of the park. There have been several close calls already, both with adults and kids, because of the speeding that happens on 1550 West. Any new development on 1550 West and 300 South is going to increase the number of people on this road and thus increase the potential for speeders. A 4-way stop will help to slow some of this traffic. 5, meeting with UDOT to get the application process started to restripe the intersection at 1550 West and 193 in order to get a left turn lane, a center lane, and a right turn lane. Currently, there is only a left turn lane and one center right lane, which causes traffic to back up quite a bit on 1550 West. This will only get worse with adding all the apartments and hotel guests from the Monterey West development, so it has been refreshing to have the developer be so proactive about not only scheduling the meeting, but to have the application process for that already started. Number 6, providing for plenty of on-site parking for the residents who will be in the apartments and single-family homes. There has been more parking than the code requires planned into Monterey West, so many potential street parkers would likely have more than enough parking in the proposed development. Although it will help the traffic scenario immensely once 300 South connects back to 193 or to 2000 West, and once 450 South, which is now stubbed in at the proposed development site, is also connected to a main arterial. It will still be some time until that happens. So as it stands now, all the traffic from any development on 1550 West and 300 South will come onto 1550 West, which stands to be very problematic. The measures the developer has proactively promised to implement will help the traffic and safety concerns. One positive aspect of the proposed Monterey West development is that it only has one outlet onto 1550 West, and much of the traffic from this development will be funneled toward 300 South and then out to 193 or 200 West once these roads are connected to arterial roads. Second, the Syracuse Arts Academy current pickup and drop-off routines and parking lot layout are at the heart of many of the current traffic problems. The developer has also been proactive about meeting with me as a neighborhood representative and coming up with potential solutions to approach the school with. Depending on how willing the Arts Academy is to implement these solutions, could greatly help to alleviate not only the current traffic and safety issues, but will provide long-term solutions as further development happens. It is important they are willing to become part of the solution. We're in the process of reaching out to the school and gathering neighborhood backing to take to the school in hopes they will be part of the long-term solution. Third, a hotel so close to a school and a neighborhood is concerning relating to potential increase in crime, predators, and traffic. The developer has proactively started looking into securing land right off of 193, still in proximity of the development between Russin Mortuary and the future hospital to build the hotel. This seems to be best, if not the only solution, if the city decides to build a hotel in this area. It should be moved to 193 instead of right off 300 South, out of sight lines of a school and neighborhood. It should not be allowed to be built with any sight lines at all to a school and a neighborhood with traffic flowing right onto and off of 193. Fourth, high-density housing apartments bring some of the same concerns with a potential increase in crime and traffic with the transient nature of apartments. One positive aspect of this proposal is the long-term involvement the developer builder will have with this project. So the maintenance of both the apartments and the single-family homes have the promise of being well maintained. However, townhomes would be much more amenable solution than apartments. Finally, I have found the developer eager to work with the neighborhood to try to create a win-win. He has rearranged things on the site, added more parking, provided community amenities, and green space that residents in Monterey Estates will benefit from, and has gone the extra mile to create solutions to our traffic and safety concerns. Although I personally would like to see townhomes versus apartments and would like to see the hotel move to 193, there are a number of things the developer has proactively done to improve existing and current issues, especially relating to traffic and safety. Thank you for your consideration of these items. Okay, and then the final email is from Summerlin Gee. I'm a resident of Monterey Estates community in Syracuse, and I would like the following comment recorded. Good evening, council. My husband and I have lived in Monterey Estates for the past year. Prior to Syracuse, we lived in Bountiful. We love Bountiful and feel it is a special place. We were similarly attracted to Syracuse as we saw many of the same wonderful things are being done here. We enjoyed the beautiful parks, the welcoming feeling downtown, and relatively few high-density housing complexes. Also, much like Syracuse, Bountiful is bordered by areas of higher density and commerciality. It is understood by residents of South Davis County that these areas are not within Bountiful City itself. Nearby Woods Cross and West Bountiful offer anchors such as Lowe's and Costco, much like the cities of West Point, Clinton, and Layton offer to Syracuse. These areas also serve commercial needs of non-residents, such as truck stops and extended stay hotels. These are not generally attractive areas and thus are not often found near residences. I am disappointed that a hotel is still being considered for Syracuse, especially near an area enthusiastically discussed as a future hospital. The land is a perfect opportunity for medical office space. Please consider Medical Drive in Bountiful. It is a development surrounding Mountain Stars Lakeview Hospital that includes pharmacies, family clinics, specialists, dentistry, and a senior living facility. Please realize that these are services that would actually be used by residents of your town. The hotel has been presented as an option for hospital visitors. To put it simply, I find this hard to believe. Knowing that the hospital will be a run-of-the-mill regional medical center, it is unlikely that visitors will travel so far for these services that it will require a hotel stay. This is not as reliable a clientele as has been presented. The hotel has also been presented as an option for base visitors. My husband and I both travel for the base, so we consider the amenities we seek. Restaurants, bars, attractions, landmarks, public transit, and proximity to base were a few of the things we listed. The proposed hotel offers none of the above. We have posited that we lived elsewhere and traveled to Hill Air Force Base. We would seek lodging either in Davis Conference Center area of Layton or the historic 25th Street area of Ogden. Syracuse, and especially the site of Syracuse, does not offer the amenities travelers seek. I am opposed to the hotel as it offers no retail opportunities to the residents of Syracuse. It was brought up in the Planning Commission meeting last week that this does not fit the purpose of a mixed-use zone. It was also noted that many developers have attempted mixed use simply because it is the only zoning in the city that allows for high-density housing. I say back to the drawing board on this development and on the definition purpose and approved uses of your mixed-use zone. A recent survey showed Monterey Estates residents are overwhelmingly opposed to this development. A Planning Commission member called that survey heartbreaking. Please remember our hearts and our voices as you consider the Monterey West development. Please confirm, oh, that's just for me. She just wanted me to confirm receipt of the statement. So Mayor, that's the final email that I had.
All right, thank you, Cassie. Now, let's see if there are others who would like to approach the council on any issue that's not part of our agenda tonight. We'd love to hear from you. If you'd give us, state your name and your place of residence. I don't see any, Cassie. Do you see any?
I don't see any hands raised.
All right, let's move on. Let's go to item number C, the secondary water report. Robert, have you got a good report for us?
I do have a report, yes. And for as challenging as it was this season with our secondary water, I would say the Syracuse citizens managed it very, very well. So we had, let's see, I know these numbers might not mean a whole lot to people, but we did have 5,714 acre feet allotted to us for this year, 2021, which is 54% of what we had last year. It does vary each year based upon how much water is available to use in the reservoirs. So some years are really high and some are average and some are low. This year was definitely a low one for us. The season began May 1st, ended September 20th, and that coincided with what the farmers needed. So we worked together really, really well with the farmers. It turned out that all of the water that was allotted to Syracuse was delivered. We got 100% of that allotment, and 81% of that went directly to lawns and gardens use, outdoor watering to our water users. The remaining amount was just for operations of the reservoirs and tank to keep the system full and reliable. We actually did really, really well. I added some graphs in the packet that showed the water tank levels starting. Well, I went May 15th and the 15th of each month. So each of the graphs showed that by July 7th, our water tank was established right around a good level, a good high level, between right about 85 feet. And we ended up keeping it that way through the rest of the season. And amazingly enough, we had some of the best pressures this year that we've ever had for many, many, many years. And that goes to, I acknowledge the responsible water users for helping to conserve water. That is exactly what we needed to get through this year. So a lot of accolades and a lot of thank you and gratitude that I have to express to and it was tough to get through it, but a lot of people did great with that. So our enforcement efforts were out there, and I am proud to say that we only had just like 1,400 just warnings that went out, no fee, just warnings. And then out of, I can't remember how many services we have, we're up around 9,000. We only had 169 fines. So that's actually really, really small. And, hats off that at such, the small and minor efforts that every single person makes made a huge difference for the whole system, for all of us. So well done.
Thank you, Robert. And I think this will be the end of your water reports until next spring. And we're very grateful for you. I know I asked you to do this, and I know it's a lot of work to prepare, to present something every other week. So thank you. And again, a thank you to the residents. You've done a wonderful job of managing our water. We couldn't have done it without all of you. So thank you. Corinne, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Just I'm glad that we made it through. I'm very impressed that they really what was implemented was from Robert. I mean, we didn't come up with that. It's council member. So kudos, Robert. Thanks for the plans that you and your staff came up with to be able to help us make it through this. And, the residents responded well with it. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Let's move to item D, a request to be on the agenda from Lindquist Mortuary. Cresta, do you want to bring us up to date here?
Sure. We were approached by Lindquist Mortuary, Bobby Lindquist and Craig McMillan. Just wanted to change a text amendment. The picture that is attached is actually something that goes on a shared plot. It would be for someone who has two urns in there. And what they have presented to us is that it's, as more and more people are getting cremated, that they don't get to put all of the nice things on the monument with what we have now. And I'll be honest, at first the staff was kind of against it, but we actually met with Bobby and Craig up at the cemetery, and Chad and Leslie went out and measured it before so we could actually see. And it really didn't make, that big, huge of a difference. So staff is fine with this change, but Bobby and Craig are both here if they would like to add anything.
Craig or Bobby, do you want to approach the council?
Sure. This is Craig McMillan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We appreciate this forum and the opportunity to do that. It sounds like if you're in favor, and it sounds like the staff is, maybe this will be a short presentation, but let me just say this, that we are excited as a mortuary to have created our 10th location in Syracuse. We bought that property 10 years ago from Neil and Yvonne Gailey, and we were pleased with the reception that we received so far from the residents. It surpassed our expectations. We, Lindquist, have been in business for 154 years. We're the oldest mortuary in the state and the largest. And we want to applaud the people who take care of the Syracuse Cemetery. It is one of the finest. What we wanted to do was just make you aware that the needs have changed. I've been with Lindquist for 45 years. It'll be 46 years in January. And when I first started here, we had a cremation rate of about 7%. Now we're approaching 40%. What that means is that people used to be buried side by side, husband and wife, with a companion headstone that covered both graves. With both people now being cremated, they would go into one grave. And the restrictions of the size of the marker would not allow them to do a marker that was respectful of what they wanted. So many times people recognize that markers are something that share memorabilia, their ideologies, there's religious emblems that are put on there. And people that were restricted in the size weren't able to do those things. And so as we presented that day at the cemetery, many people, and we brought some examples, would like to have that opportunity. And if we were to elongate, and Bobby will take just 1 minute and explain the sizes in just a minute when I finish, but if they were able to elongate using the length of the grave rather than the width of 2 graves, they could accomplish that feat. They could put their temple on it, or they could put their elk head on it, or they could put their boat from their days at Lake Powell. It allows them to personalize this, something that with the smaller markers was not being allowed. And so that's all we were doing, is on behalf of our clientele, is making a presentation for what they see as a need. Bobby, do you want to take a minute and share those numbers?
Yes, I do. First, thank you for letting us be here to present this. And we are excited to be in Syracuse. We're excited to serve the people of Syracuse, and we're honored to do that. The size that we're proposing is you allow us to have a 24-inch granite headstone that goes north to south. And then it will have a 6-inch concrete border on each side. And then we would like the length of the marker, east to west, to be allowed to be 30 inches of granite allowed, with another 6-inch border on the top and bottom of the marker. We think that would be suffice in order to have a companion headstone on a single grave.
Well, thank you. We're grateful both to you and Craig for coming and joining us tonight. Council staff has no issues with this. What really helped is for us to go on site and have Craig and Bobby show us what they were talking about. It was sometimes hard not being at the cemetery to understand exactly what they were talking about. But I think staff is all in agreement that this is probably a doable thing. So Corinne, or let's see, Dave, this is you're up.
Well, I'd just like to be short and sweet here, that it appears that this doesn't create any challenges for our ongoing maintenance. And with no conflict, I don't see any reason not to approve the change.
Okay. Did you make that by way of motion?
I would make a motion.
Is this
just a work session?
Yeah, this is just a work session.
Yeah.
We're not making motions.
Can we put
But
this?
I'm
on-
okay putting it on the consent agenda.
Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody? Okay, let's put it on the consent agenda. Cassie, would you do that for us? Okay, let's go to the BMX.
Thank
to the
you.
Parks Advisory
Thank you.
Committee
Thank you.
regarding the
Thank you.
BMX track. Krista?
Yeah, we just, over the last several months, we've been meeting with the Parks Advisory Committee about our BMX. And I put the information that we have come up with, but Jordan and I talked, and Jordan wanted to, being the liaison for the council, he was going to talk for a minute about what was decided. Do you want to go, Jordan?
Sure. So you have it in the packet, the various options. Hopefully you guys hear me. I'm tethered to a cell phone, so we'll see how well I might be really choppy. But the committee really focused on they really wanted this in the community. We've had several people talk about the BMX, and we think this is a good fit for our community. They presented the various locations and their priority. Again, I can't pull up the packet because my internet is so low. But if I recall, their first preferred location was the regional park. I think I got it. Regional park, followed by the fields, and lastly was the field next to the city hall. So those where they liked those locations. They also encouraged us to try and at a minimum plan for not just the regular dirt ones, which is the first level, simply because it requires a lot more maintenance and a lot more water. If you can pave the turns and the start, you can kind of grow into the higher levels of track. So that's kind of what they proposed. The agreement, hopefully you all were able to read through it. But to summarize, the city will be taking care of infrastructure, which would be electricity, water, restrooms. Was the parking lot included in that, or were they going to cover the parking lot? I don't remember.
No, we were parking lot.
We were parking lot. And then they would be focusing on the hills, and like I say, they would be taking care of the paving, but really they just need a spot to put it. And they said they would be happy wherever we can fit them. They did like the equestrian park, but we removed that from consideration. So those were kind of the options. So now it's up to us to figure out if this is something we want to move forward with, as well as offering up potential locations and what we're willing to commit to. So hopefully that covered it. How do I do, Cresta?
Good. I just wanted to add, because you don't have this, that we did some research, and obviously the BMX track could be anywhere from $400,000 to $600,000. And that is the BMX Antelope is already out getting donations. They've already got $20,000 for that, but they would be doing a big chunk of the change for that. And then the pump track, which would be the responsibility of Syracuse City if we decided to go that route, can be anywhere from $50,000 up to what we would like, $200,000. Or if you wanted to do it all asphalt, it could be up to $400,000. So there's a wide range of what we could do.
So on the pump track, if we do one of the composites, which I want to say was in the 150 range.
And that one's a good one. And at the conference that I was at this past week, Chad and I met with one of them to talk about it at the vendor expo. And they said a good one that you can change up, and it actually is pretty big. It's about 150,000. Now, if you want the asphalt, it would be the top end of 400,000.
Yeah. Is there a benefit to asphalt over composite? I didn't see anything.
I would say we've got Zach Randall and Brad Farnsworth who actually do that a lot. And so if they would like to speak on which one would be better. I mean, with the composite that you do, you can actually continue to grow it. So you could start out smaller and then put pieces into it. So that's kind of
undo some bolts and move stuff around, and suddenly you got a bigger and better.
Yeah.
Nice.
And if you have issues, you can, replace pieces.
Yeah. So, but Zach Randall's here also if you guys have any questions. We'd also put in different versions of what USA BMX can start at, the smallest up to the largest. So you guys can look at that. And then at the very last one, he put in a picture of just what the Syracuse track would start out at, as if it was in what the, this one was the location for the equestrian park, but obviously we're not doing that, but it would be about the same size.
And one thing to note that confused me in the packet, as you got into the bigger locations, I thought the track scaled with the land, but the track is the same size regardless. The additional land in the larger venues, if you will, are just for that. It's for additional parking and additional staging areas and maybe some additional amenities, but the track is the same size in every single one of those categories.
It also, Zach had said it's around 3 to 5 acres is what this could be built on.
Yeah.
Zach, would you like to comment?
Let's see. I don't know if I have much to add other than I think everything's been covered. The pump track. Yeah, we had just kind of given suggestions, just from our experience when we learned that you guys had also been approached about doing the pump track. Just staying away from a dirt pump track, which I know that basically has already been done. That's not an option. So I think as long as you just don't do a dirt pump track, you do at the very minimum, something composite or a paved pump track, you'll be good as far as that goes. So
I'm not really clear on what a pump track is. As I was reading through it, it shows what it's made of, but what's the difference between the park itself and a pump track?
So a pump track is pretty much just a course that any cyclist can ride on. Any type of bicycle, pretty much all ages. It's just hills and turns, and basically that a person could pump around on without pedaling. And so it's just kind of a skills course, if you will. And the BMX track would be a course where sanctioned events are held on. So organized races and competition, things like that. So the pump track would be open, basically like a city park where as long as the weather is good and the pump track is dry, it's able to be ridden on. It's open. The BMX track would be open, fenced in and open on designated for designated events, practices, races, things like that.
Basically protected from the public use and kind of separated that way. Okay,
right,
thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
And Antelope BMX would lease that from the city.
Yeah. And then Lisa, I had a lot of friends, what they would do is before they, as their kids were learning to ride their bikes, once they had kind of got their pedals under them, wheels under them, they would do that as kind of a training stage before they go take them up into the mountain biking. Like you said, there's different skills. There's going up and down hills, and it's just a good time just to go ride around with the family as just kind of teaching them your kids how to ride a bike on something other than just a regular road.
Thank you.
And they're pretty popular from what I've seen.
My niece used to race pump track up in Cache Valley and loved it. So
Cody's gonna show you.
Yeah, here's an example online.
yeah.
Without audio.
It's great.
Just kind of give you an example.
So the whole thing is the small hills give you the momentum to make it through the next one and so forth. So get used to going up and down and around. That's why it's called a pump track.
It seems to make sense to me if we're dealing with the parking lot that we would combine it with the regional park, because wouldn't we see some savings if we were to do a larger swath of parking there that could cross over between both the park and this BMX track?
Is Is the Fields location next to that?
It's
Just
very
curious.
close.
Because that could
It's
also
about,
duplicate on
what,
parking
400
as well.
yards away.
Close.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
close.
Yeah,
It's very close. And I
My
think
concern
that
with the regional park,
the Fields has a lot more acreage, so
my
parking
concern,
and expanding parking wouldn't be a problem. My first concern about consideration for the regional park is which part are you going to cut out to put this in? Because we already felt like what we had programmed space in the regional park was not even going to take care of all our needs. So I would hate to take something out of that.
That's why I was asking if it's close enough that we can use that duplicate parking or duplicate use of parking. Sounds like Jordan's having some hard time. You still there, Jordan?
Can
Well,
you
along those
guys hear me?
Oh, yeah.
I'm here.
we
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Major delay.
Oh, all right. Yeah, so I was gonna say the same. The engineering
We're losing.
Jordan, you
And
can't hear. You're cutting out. We can't hear you at all, Jordan.
We hear like
and or at least we're doing the engineering right now. I'm just
Jordan, you got to quit sharing if you want us to hear you.
I'm not sharing. Not sharing, am I?
Oh,
I was, sorry.
I think Brody was showing you where the Fields was.
Yeah.
Jordan, have you turned off your video? That might help your feed. But we need to hear your audio. If you can.
So many buttons. Can you hear me now?
A little better.
Testing.
It's a little better.
1, 2, 3. All right. Well, I'll give this a testing. I'll
Jordan,
give this
you may have to move to City Hall.
a shot. So
okay. So in
Jordan spoke with me earlier, so I know what he was trying to say. If you want me to speak for you for just a second, Jordan, his concern was that we've already planned on engineering this and designing the regional park. So to do this, we'd have to go back and do a different design and engineering. And so he would prefer the Fields. That's what he was.
I don't want to waste the money that we've already spent on engineering the regional park by trying to redo it so that we can fit this in.
Wasn't the area at what, I'm sorry to interrupt. Wasn't there an area that we were talking about that was going to be west of the regional park area that we were talking about doing a dog
That's
park?
the Fields.
Oh, okay.
That's what Jordan is
fair.
saying is his preferred.
Well,
And I agree.
It's kind of
that's the
east
Fields.
also of the regional park.
Yeah. So Brody's showing you the cursor there. We've
Please.
got where the next.
That's the field.
Let's
Yeah,
go back
hold
to
on,
the
hold on.
picture. Thank you, Brody.
Yeah, so the regional park property is right in here, right?
Right.
This is the school and then the regional park over here. Then there's a property in between. This is known as the green property,
Right.
which is under development. And then there's the field subdivision, which is right here, which was a cluster subdivision
Right.
with the residential piece up here and the open space right here.
Okay. And there was part of that was dedicated to the city, the lower part. And that's what we're talking about. Now, just curious if on the green property, I'm wondering if some of that eventually will or will not be developable. Anybody know?
They have the same challenge that the other properties do.
That's
The
what I would
lower portion is not under sewer fall.
That's what I would guess as well.
like-
Yeah.
Why don't we, I think they've done some, I think they're adding soil, so it's not the same restrictions, but I don't
Interesting.
know, Noah, you're probably more familiar with it, but I think there's only a very small sliver here that they're not going to develop.
Okay. I still like the fields better though than regional.
Yeah, I can speak to that. They've called it Park View. Isn't that clever? Because you can see the park from that. They're working on final plat of the northern half, and the southern half has the same restrictions, but they're planning on adding a bunch of soil. But we don't have plans for that yet. I think that's their plan though, is to bring in a bunch of fill. So the amount that on the south edge next to Gentile, what is actually left by the time they're done is probably, my guess is 100 feet or so. Enough. We've talked about having a trail go through there and maybe a little bit of ground, but more like a strip.
Okay. Thanks,
So-
Noah.
I think that we probably ought to look into this deeper as a council. I certainly want to proceed with the idea that we would move towards a BMX track. I think I still have some investigation that I want to be able to do, like, how that would lay out on the fields, because I think that's the preferred location. I'd like to understand a little bit more about what it looks like to expand the place. If the track is set, if it's a standardized set for races, then we're really only talking about surrounding development. And so I just kind of like to, we didn't see that part in the packet of what the surrounding development would change. I'd kind of like to get some thoughts on that. I'm not against it at all. I just want to kind of go in with my eyes wide open on it. So
Go ahead, Glenn.
I would say the only other consideration would be to, accommodate parking, which a lot of people were fine parking on dirt for a while, until funding can be taken care of for that portion. But especially where it's an odd shaped area on that field, it's much larger than the land next to the to city building. So, I mean, granted, they've got the parking though. That's the advantage, the one advantage there.
Property next to the city building, I think, is going to be important for other things. So I'd hesitate to.
I'm with you on that too.
Yeah, so I don't think that's a real.
Let me
I'm
make
just saying size wise though, we've got plenty of space is what I'm trying to say straight up front.
Let me make a suggestion. Today we met with Rex Harris on the West Davis Highway. When that highway goes through, there's going to be some surplus land over in the neighborhood of the park's maintenance facility. We looked at that today and asked him if that would be available for purchase by the city. It could be developed, but not real efficiently. But I was wondering if maybe the BMX track and the pump track couldn't be over there in the neighborhood with the park's maintenance facility. And we just began discussing that today. I kind of agree with Dave. I think this needs some more research before we go any further.
One last consideration I'd like to throw into the mix is that while I understand the similarity between the two, I'm wondering if there's any merit to considering the pump track separate from the BMX track, in that it would be easy for us to put a pump track, maybe somebody in another park where we might have some space, or just be it an additional feature, or because it can be flexible in shape and space, maybe it fits on some awkward land somewhere that we might have. I'm just open to that. I'm not saying that I'm married to that. I just like to have that be part of the discussion if anybody else is willing.
Well, and along with that, the great thing about pump tracks is that they don't require a lot of water. So maybe the fields is the right place for that, because you don't have to have a ton of structures and sewer fall. And maybe you have to put that on the northern end, if we need bathrooms or something in the future.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss it more. And I think that we've kind of come to the conclusion which areas are going to be more efficient. And and I would be interested to see if there's any feasibility with the area by our maintenance building. So
can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
so here's, I think if you try, so over by the park maintenance facility, we wouldn't know on that for 4 years.
Yeah, we may not know for a few
I'm
months.
pretty sure by then they've moved elsewhere.
Yeah,
No, our comment today with Rex was it could be done in a month.
Really?
Yes.
Because like
they'd
12 months?
No, like in a few months.
They'd established like the area that they're going to build, or what? Why months? To explain that, if you can.
Well, we asked them if this is something that's going to be tied up for a long time. The only thing we would have to do is make sure that the former landowners are gifted with the right of first refusal. If they're not the right of first refusal, then UDOT wants to get rid of land as soon as possible, because whatever they sell now goes into this project and not into the general fund. So it's
But now we're buying land.
Well, we would have to buy it.
I like the fields the best.
so let me go here with this. I am of the opinion that we could probably serve the BMX people by saying that we have a definite interest and we would like to find a home for them within the city at one of the options. And then maybe if we go to the October work session, and by then we learn more about what Rex has to say and what the possibilities and what the land might look like, we would be able to discuss this again. So if we commit to them that we'll find a home, then they can move forward with all their fundraising. And then we just have to, I mean, we can tell them flat out that we're leaning towards the fields, but I think that if we want to keep our options open, we could talk about it at the next work session. Does that sound reasonable?
Zach, does that meet your timeline?
Yeah, I mean, we're on, working with you guys. And so whatever you think is best. I guess a couple of things that were brought up. I'd invite you to, you talked about doing some research on it, maybe look at Rad Canyon BMX in South Jordan. So that's a BMX track that's been there for over 20 years. And it's a facility that hosts a national race every year. So it's a bigger facility, a lot of parking, stuff like that is able to host events of that size. So that would be a good place for you to check out to get a feel of what we're looking at doing. And then another thing about maybe splitting up the pump track with the BMX track, I'd try to encourage not doing that. We've just talked a lot about the benefits of having them both together.
Okay.
They both, I mean, they're both so similar and would play off of each other and could really, just go back and forth between being utilized by cyclists. And so I think the benefit of having those together really outweighs, any thought of wanting to split those up.
So we hadn't really heard that part of it, and I'm very respective of your expertise. So maybe the next time we talk about it, we could talk about what some of those benefits are. But because I'm all for it. If that makes more sense, I just want to hear more about that. But would you send us the address of that Rad Canyon or whatever, so that because I would take the time to go look at it and understand it better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Zach, if you want to send it to me, then I'll make sure all the council get it.
Yeah, and we
have
could
my
even,
email address.
If needed, we could make arrangements to because like I said, it's a locked up facility. It's a private facility, and so we could make arrangements to have it open and
I would appreciate that
for you guys to take a look at.
Okay, Cassie, let's put this on the October work session for further discussion. But in the meantime, we all have assignments that we need to do to bring more light to the subject by that October meeting. Okay. Okay, let's move on. Let's go on to planning items. Noah?
So I think I'm starting off on this one, Mayor.
Oh, are you? Okay.
Yeah. So the first item here is just a continuation of our policy discussion on landscaping. And John Perry, the Assistant General Manager with Weaver Basin Water Conservancy District, is here online with us tonight. And I asked him to attend just because they've been taking an active role in promoting water-wise ordinances throughout the county or throughout the region, and have actually put together some incentive programs related to that. And so we thought it'd be good for him to join us and I'll have him come online here in a second to discuss kind of their perspective on this. So not in the packet, but in the Teams folder for the council, I have the updated proposed changes that we would make from a policy perspective to our ordinance. I apologize for the mix-up. That was an older draft that made it in the packet, but this, I think, we reviewed it with staff, and we think it accurately reflects where most of the council was. I'm not gonna, we have 10 minutes for this item. I'm not gonna go through each item unless you haven't had any time to look at it, then we can walk through it. But I do want to give John some time. And so I was wondering if John, you could take a few seconds and just kind of give us your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Kind of the standard Zoom introduction, right? Asking if everybody can hear you. Thanks for having me at this work meeting this evening. I appreciate you guys taking time to discuss, water-wise landscape ordinances and our water supply and land planning nexus. As Brody mentioned, Weber Basin Water Conservancy District is a regional water supplier, and we've got regional conservation programs that we engage in on a frequent basis. One of our main missions is to ensure that we've got adequate supply of water to meet the community needs within our 2,500 square mile drainage. And so this is one of the conversations that we've been engaging in frequently with a lot of different communities as of late is that of landscape ordinances and how we can ensure that moving forward, our land planning efforts and our water supply, demands and things like that are better integrated and there's more discussions taking place. As Brody referenced, we do have a new conservation program that we've introduced here within our service area within the last 4 or so months. It's the Flip Your Strip program, where we're basically incentivizing users or residents to remove their turf from their park strip areas and be incentivized up to $1.25 a square foot, provided they come and participate in a class and they meet certain vegetation and reestablishment of vegetation requirements. But one thing we are asking is that in order to have communities eligible for this program, that certain landscape ordinances are adopted that incentive or basically encourage and allow for participation in more water-wise landscapes in our communities. And so really what we're trying to accomplish is allow flexibility within the existing ordinance structures for residents to participate in water-wise landscapes. So people that are already existing homes to have the ability to participate without being in conflict with anything on the books. And B, because these are expensive programs, they do come with a significant cost. We really want to work with the communities to make sure that new growth and new development are held to a higher standard related to irrigation system design and the planting of water intensive vegetation. And so that's really what we're trying to accomplish as we engage in these conversations. Brody, I believe, kind of attached our general standards that we're looking to have incorporated into into ordinances to facilitate participation in these programs. Brody, is that what you're looking for?
Yeah. On the incentive program, so we had a previous discussion in August, and I had gotten some of your comments on the review of some of the changes we were looking at making. How closely tied does the council need to be in amending the ordinance to what Weber Basin is recommending in the sample ordinance in order to qualify?
Yeah, the sample ordinance is a pretty robust document that really is intended to initiate conversation and have us engage in what are best practices, what are things that could be incorporated into our landscape ordinance. That one-page sheet with the bullet points, that's really what we're looking for. That's the restrictions on turf areas for commercial, industrial, institutional spaces, no more than 15%. It's restrictions on width of less than 8 feet, not having those turf areas. It's really working with the single family residentials to try and get that to about 35% turf areas. And I know these percentages sound pretty aggressive, but if you start looking at some of those commercial, industrial, institutional spaces, 15% of that area being allowed for turf areas is actually pretty robust, even in the single family residential, right? At the end of the day, what we're asking everybody to do is turf's not bad. Turf serves a purpose, and it certainly is the place you want to be recreating on. But rather than have it be the default vegetation, let's have those turf areas be designed spaces, and then fill in the other areas with drip irrigation and water-wise plantings and things like that. And so, yeah, we are looking to have those bullet point items, Brody, be the major items of consideration. That model ordinance is more of a, if we were working with a community that didn't have ordinances on the book and we're starting from scratch, this is a good place to start and to mold it to their community needs. So.
Okay. In our previous discussion, it sounded like we were really close. I think where we landed was I don't think the council was too comfortable with having the restrictions on single family. We didn't have maximum limits on HOA, multifamily, or PRD properties, but we did on commercial and institutional. The 8-foot widths, I think they were willing to regulate. But on the single family, the language they felt better with was like strongly encourage, like the drip irrigation and mixed irrigation zones. But they weren't comfortable doing that. I didn't know if that was going to be a problem as far as qualification.
We can talk about it. I certainly understand that that's probably one of the more aggressive points of this landscape ordinance that's being discussed. I think one thing to point out is as we look at our master planning of our water supply and demands within our drainage basins, so the communities along the Wasatch Front, the anticipated population growth, what may or may not come as a result of climate variability and some changes that are taking place, it really does become imperative that we start planning for what our water demands are going to be with the future growth, what our zoning patterns are and things like that. If you look at the municipal water use or residential water use, 70-80% of a typical household's water use is outdoors. It's applied during the irrigation months during July and August, right? That's where we're seeing a large portion of the water going and being used. And a lot of times you'll go out to a half-acre lot or a third-acre lot, and there's a lot of turf areas that aren't being utilized, right? Outside of watering and some mowings that take place, that's kind of the extent of what's being used. And so what we're asking is let's look at what our projections are. Let's look at what Syracuse City's master plan is. Let's see if there's opportunities to adopt some ordinances that extend the existing water supply the community has access to right now without the need to develop and maybe impact the environment more so than the community is willing to moving forward. And B, make sure that capital development projects and infrastructure improvements can be minimized as a result of some of those savings. So I think we can discuss it. If the city council isn't comfortable with that 35%, I'd be more than willing to engage in conversations with Brody or staff to see what you guys are comfortable with and see what we can work through.
Well, John, really quick. It's not necessarily the percentage, it's how do you enforce it? And then do we have to hire more staff? Do landowners have to get a permit to put in a lawn? So on. How do you number one, enforce it? And then what are the penalties for it and so forth? It becomes a whole new ball of wax, and they're having a hard enough time keeping up with building permits, let alone lawn permits.
Well, it becomes regulatory in nature. And once again, I think there is a real tendency for government in general to have a great idea and then implement it in such a way that it's punitive. And we're seeing that on a national level in every way. And we see it all the time on every level. But what we were really hoping to do with these ordinance changes was to open up possibilities where before we've been so set on turf, and the old traditional ways. And we wanted to start saying, well, let's revisit this and let's start giving more opportunities. But what I think we twisted into, once we start getting percentages and we start getting into just as Corinne said, if we start to have to get staff in order to figure this out, then we just took the great incentives that have been offered with the Weaver Conservancy District and we turned it into, here's a stick to beat you with, if you don't have this specific number, or rather than giving them a little more of a sense of, gosh, I have 10 different options now, where I used to only have 2 that were pretty wasteful, you know, and in how we used to water turf and on a strip. So anyway, I just think that there's a great ability to teach and to provide opportunities for change without having it become regulatory, bureaucratic, and what we tend to do the worst of in government, which is create another bureau. You know, so it's not to say we don't want to do this. We just have to be really careful about the implementation.
Yeah, can you talk to how other cities are enforcing this, if they are at all? Or is this just they put it in there and then never look at it again?
Well, you know, I can't speak to every community and what's going on, but the conversations we've had is that certainly on the commercial, industrial, institutional spaces, that just becomes a part of the permitting process, right?
Yeah, those we get permits.
That's easy, and we don't have an issue.
Even
Right.
HOAs and master plan communities, we're on board. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's just the residential we have no way to really enforce. But I love making these as strongly recommend. But yeah, we just have to be careful that we don't create an ordinance that we have zero intention of enforcing or zero capability to enforce.
I think we
And
have to
something
be
like
respectful.
mulch. How do you go around and check 3 inches of mulch? You know, so once again, I think we've got to be really careful about how we're stating this.
But I think that we also have to recognize that people's personal space in single family dwellings do make changes on a regular basis. And like has been mentioned, you don't want a regulatory division for this, that people would have to come and inform the city when they make changes. But people do people on a whim one weekend make changes in some of those things, and you just can't regulate that. It's an overreach.
But I do want to add one more bullet to it, since we're putting all this stuff in anyway. I've noticed all the people that are flipping their strips, the weeds are becoming a problem in those front strips. So I'd like to add a bullet point that says, in addition to be served by drip irrigation, etc., be kept free of noxious weeds and other volunteer plants. Just because it is becoming a problem. I had no idea that I would see so many weeds in most strips if we had them flip it.
This year, we didn't even flip ours, and all of our grass was overwhelmed with weeds because of the distress of the water.
Drought conditions, the weeds flourish and the grass struggles.
What I don't want to have happen is
it turns into a noxious weed farm. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to try and put something in there that says, if you do this, that doesn't mean there's no more maintenance of your strip. There still has to be some pride and ownership, because I don't want Syracuse to be the land of weedy mow strips.
That's already in our code, though. You can't have more than 6-inch weeds.
Well, I would say that's why I said be kept free of noxious weeds and other volunteer plants. Not just that you mow them, because that doesn't look a lot better. That you actually do a proactive effort.
When my grandparents, anyway, when I was a little kid, their mow strip, they said, well, it's city property, it's not ours. So they didn't ever mow. They didn't water it, they didn't do anything. So when you say it's pride of ownership, well, let's just keep the weeds down just to be nice.
So in the interest of moving on, I would make the effort that I think there's still some discussion to be had. I would not put this on an approval agenda. I would put this on a future discussion agenda, because I think that we have to talk a lot more about how we would manage the single family development component.
I don't know that you can. If you can,
well, that's the part. I don't think we can.
Yeah, you have to eliminate that part for sure, because there's except for put in the words we strongly suggest, and these are the reasons why in an educational type of situation. But I don't.
But if I heard correctly, what we would need to do is discuss offline what that would impact in the result of a policy. Because if that doesn't work, then how do we? I'm comfortable with what we can do for ourselves, but how does this work with Weber Basin and what they're trying to do? If it doesn't, we need to understand that impact.
Well, and pretty
See,
much
what
it's
I'd like to do,
qualify for the Flip the Strip program, but I don't know that we
Yeah.
want to penalize everybody in our city because we want a few people to participate in a Flip the Strip. Does that
I
make
agree.
sense?
yeah,
So,
my counter proposal would be is we go ahead and incorporate these changes into all the areas that we already agree upon. So mixed use, PRD,
Commercial.
everywhere, commercial. And I would, like I said, I'd like to change the wording to not just 6 inches or less, that it be changed to be kept free of noxious weeds and other volunteer plants, because you can mow milkweed all day, but it still looks like milkweed and goat heads and puncture weeds. And so I would actually like to change it to that wording. And as far as single family, I would like to just put in that the city offers the following guidance, and put in these items that says this is our guidance, but I don't want to make something that's unenforceable. And hopefully that is sufficient to meet the needs of the desirement. All words are made up, of the Water Conservancy District.
So
goals,
I think there's some
goals.
merit in what you're
Goals.
saying, but I think that when you talk about like the weeds part of what you just mentioned, while I agree, I don't think we can enforce it. I do not want to double our code enforcement staff to go around and check for weeds in mow strips. That's ridiculous.
Well,
So
I'm specifically concerned with in commercial areas, because we see that people are mowing
all right,
goat heads, and that's doesn't help us
that's
accomplish
not
our
efficient,
goals.
it's not effective.
So that's good strategery, Jordan.
I like the word strategic.
So
All words are made up.
The next step that we wanted to do is go from kind of a policy discussion to incorporating actual language in an ordinance.
Yes,
So
that's what I want next.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is at least the items that are consistent, everybody's agreed on and is consistent with Weaver Basin's goals. We can move that into ordinance language, and then we can work on anything else that's hanging out there.
Yep,
good. Thank you.
that's what I would recommend.
Okay.
And then I would like us to take a crack at putting in the recommendations in the single family zones.
Agreed.
Oh, and maybe John could go back to the district and see if that's a hard pill for them to swallow, not to regulate single family homes.
Well, the thing is,
I think,
Go ahead,
sorry, I don't,
John.
Yeah, I think one thing to keep in mind is, we are looking for opportunities to reduce our per capita demands, right? I think you guys are expecting a lot of growth out in your neck of the woods. The district's certainly planning for a doubling of the population. The state is actively engaged in regional water conservation goals and in establishing different, milestones and water use patterns for different areas of the state. This 35% one, this wasn't necessarily my brainchild or my staff's brainchild. This was, parameters that have been established in state planning documents. And so I think, if nothing else, we need to start engaging in the conversation about what future water use and landscapes are going to look like, and encouraging shifts in behaviors. Does it need to be a straight up 35%? We can have conversations about, I'd love to engage in conversations with Brody and his staff, maybe the group that is responsible for kind of responding to ordinance complaints that they have right now, and see if there are opportunities with the strong recommendation to maybe have it be a little bit more than just a strong recommendation. I can tell you right now, Robert Whiteley gave that report on secondary water usage over this last year. We saw the same type of response with our customers. We saw significant reductions in water use in the tail end of July, and certainly in the month of August. But it was some pretty strong messaging. It was some pretty strong enforcement policies to get people to adhere to the restrictions that were in place. And based on our, the meter data that we collect every month, and the engagements that we reach out to with our customer agencies, you probably have 70% or so of the population that here's the need for some shifts in behaviors. Here's some needs for different things to be done and respond. And you got the remaining 30% that some of them need a little bit more prodding, and some of them are never going to come along without, a lot more interaction and education. So I agree 100%. Education is going to be critical. Education is always going to be a strong leg upon which conservation programs are built on here in the district. But we do need to start looking at what, how are we going to accommodate our children still living in the area? How are we going to accommodate continued growth in our communities? And landscapes are going to be critical to meeting that need moving forward. So I appreciate all your comments. I see validity in every single one of them. So I think continued dialogue will be great.
One thing I'm concerned about is that if you force people to go away from turf, many of the options force people to do a lot more maintenance. And I don't know that everybody's willing to do that. Some of the alternatives require a lot more work. And one of the reasons why I think people do just go kind of crazy with lawn is because you just mow it and water it, and that's all you have to do. If we force people into a lot more care and maintenance, we could end up looking pretty shabby.
Yeah, it's got to be done right.
That's my concern.
And certainly, our Flip Your Strip program right now, anybody that participates in that program is required to come and participate in an hour class here at the district. And it's to do exactly that. It's to make sure they understand some of the things they're going to run up into. It's to give them ideas for what the design can look like. It's to help educate them on what their community's expectations may be. So you're 100% correct. We need to make sure that it's done right. And it certainly is a shift in what's required to maintain the landscaping. We've got, some demonstrations out here at our garden that probably fall into that category of increased maintenance that you would see when compared to a turf area. We certainly have some that require quite a bit less maintenance, but I think at the end of the day, the story is it's going to be different than what they're used to. And that's the biggest educational component we have right now is getting people to be comfortable with differing maintenance activities than just mowing and fertilizing and watering, right? It's maintaining a drip irrigation system. It's as opposed to mowing a lawn for 30 minutes, it's weeding for 20 or something like that. So it is a shift. There's no such thing as a maintenance-free landscape. And we certainly don't want to see these things become blighted areas of the community. We want to set people up for success.
Okay, we've been 20 minutes doing a 10-minute discussion. So Brody, let's move forward with the things we can agree on in the ordinance, and then let's bring this back for discussion.
Okay.
And
thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
For your time.
Thanks,
By the way, John, 3 of us were on your tour of the watershed. That was a great opportunity. So thank you.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Try to do that more often. Thanks for your time, guys.
Noah?
Hello, council. Good evening. So this next item is a final plat. And recently we amended the ordinance so that final plats don't go to council unless they are part of RPC or PRD. So this is part of a PRD development that we've seen multiple times with the general plan and the rezone and preliminary plat and all that. So they're working on moving towards the first phase. So it's a purely administrative item. The plans are in the packet, staff reports in the packet. Everything's looking good so far. Do you guys have any questions for me?
That's the only question is what does it mean to go to Mylar? That's the only question.
A Mylar is kind of like the type of paper that they use at the county recorder's office, like archive.
Oh, like regular Mylar. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like kind of transparent a little bit.
Yeah.
Any other discussion, council? No, we good?
Nope.
I appreciate the fact that they're pushing off some of the higher density stuff in their later phase that's always nice.
Okay. Can we put this on a consent agenda?
Yes.
I
Okay.
think so.
Cassie, would you do that for us?
No. Dave said no.
You said no?
I said no.
Okay. Put this on the agenda for discussion and a vote next time. Cassie, will you? Okay, let's go on, Noah.
Okay, the next item is the one that we've already had some comments tonight about. It's a rezone to MXD, and it's for a hotel and apartments and some single-family units. The Planning Commission has held 2 public hearings to talk about this. This is kind of a very detailed report that I've included in the packet here. So I'll try to summarize the best I can, but I believe the applicant is here, Josh Hughes. And so to preface, the submittal does not meet the MXD ordinance. And so the applicant knew that going in. And so he submitted application for a text amendment and also some development agreement language that would kind of allow us to legally move forward if this were to be desired at this location. So I don't know, maybe I'll float a little bit higher level before I get into the specifics of, what it is and isn't. So it's 141 units, 3-story apartments, and there's 11 units of single family, and then there's a proposed 4-story hotel with 84 rooms, 51,000 square feet. Some of the issues that we found is in the mixed use ordinance, the hotel use is not actually listed as a permitted use. And then I would say the majority of the other items were kind of architectural in nature. So Planning Commission reviewed the application, and they're actually recommending approval with conditions. One condition is that they have a hotel on board. In the packet, you'll see reference to a Marriott, which the applicant said that they can't really commit to that name, that brand name. So Planning Commission was a little bit leery about that, whether or not a hotel is feasible or what kind of, I guess there was a lot of discussion about and concern about what kind of hotel, because the brand is important, and they're just worried about if it was a lesser brand and the types of things that might come along with that. The other condition was that they shift some things around, like the neighbors had talked about in that public hearing with Planning Commission, which he's done. And then they're also recommending kind of how we did with Briggs to do as an off-site, so that the hotel area is zoned general commercial and the apartment area is zoned mixed use, which would remedy some of the architectural problems with what's being proposed. So yeah, hopefully that summarizes what the proposal is. I've done a very detailed staff report that's included. Hopefully you've had a chance to read through some of the things in there. So I think that's a pretty good introduction. I'll turn it back over to you guys.
Lisa, do you want to lead us out?
I'd like to hear from Josh and just kind of hear maybe the changes that happened between the original and then with it not being in compliance with mixed use. And I understand that you've made some changes there. And just maybe I'd just like to hear from the developer. Whatever you feel is pertinent to the discussion.
Mayor, is that all right if I address the council?
Sure.
All right, thank you. So yeah, there's been a lot of changes since you guys saw this a few months ago. At that point, it was the Abington, as you may recall, and I believe it was 127 townhomes. They were 100% for rent townhomes, and they were kind of through the, I guess it's called the Fourplex Investment Group. Anyway, we looked at that project and we thought, gosh, we could do better for the city. And so what we're proposing is something that we're really excited about and believe is superior to the prior proposal in several different ways. One of which is we include a lot more commercial. As you guys know, that the mixed use requires commercial. Several proposals have sometimes just had the minimum commercial. This particular proposal has more commercial square footage per unit by far than any prior proposal up to this point. It's obviously the hotel that's been proposed, and we know that that's something that the city's been excited about integrating into the community as an amenity for quite a while. We also feel like we did a better job buffering the single family residents. As you can see in the plan, there's single family homes that border the other single family homes. And so we kind of go from, less intense on kind of the south east to more intense as you go west. So go single family, 2-story individual homes to 3-story apartments to eventually, a 4-story hotel that we proposed. And eventually, if the rumors we've heard are right, eventually a 5-story hospital that will be, maybe adjacent to us to the west. So we tried to do a little bit better buffering there. We also believe one of the problems with the prior proposals that didn't really take into account what was going next door. We feel like we're proposing, a complementary use with the future planned hospital. And, we believe a hotel would be a nice amenity to that, whether it be for traveling doctors and nurses or for, patient families, or obviously many other needs in the community. And then finally, we think that we've done better with traffic, our traffic plan. That was a big item of concern as we listened to the prior meetings. And as you can see in the packet, we've proposed kind of a traffic mitigation plan. Ms. Vino addressed several of the traffic measures we're doing in her letter. And I guess the final thing that I would say, I think that we've done a little bit better is trying to work with the community. As Ms. Vino also referenced, we've shuffled some parking locations, we've shuffled building locations, we've added amenities. We've done several different things in response to Ms. Vino and other people's feedback in the community. And the last thing that we're trying to do to hopefully really help the community is use this offsite option of the mixed use ordinance in an actual offsite way. So as it's proposed right now, the hotel would be on our property, but we've been in contact with the broker of the group that just recently purchased the land to our west. And we are trying to get a parcel that would be along 193 and a little bit further west for the hotel. And so we do the offsite option in an actual offsite way. And and that would alleviate, as we've been told, a lot of the concerns of the neighbors. And so anyway, again, we believe it's superior to what you've seen in the past, and we believe it's a great project, and we're excited to propose it to the council.
Lisa, do you want to begin again?
Sorry, say that again.
Do you want to begin again? You'd
No,
asked for Josh.
great to hear that information. So the offsite, that's interesting because we've had a lot of discussions in the past about what offsite actually means for us and whether we're using it as an option to skirt the requirements, but I don't believe that is doing so, and especially when it answers a lot of the concerns of the citizens in that previous development already there. So I'll turn my time over to other council members.
Corinne, you want to respond?
I just have a question. If you could explain about the commitments that with hoteliers of building,
Yeah, absolutely. Normally, we wouldn't get into a specific brand at this point. As you guys know, the mixed use ordinance requires elevations to be submitted with our rezone application. And so it kind of forced us to, we're not going to just create, a hotel from scratch. And so it kind of forced us to, pick a team, if that makes sense. And so we reached out to Marriott, and it's specifically interested in their town place suites. They did a search, of the area with their program and their own internal algorithm. and said that they thought there was about 25,000 annual nights that could be captured by a new property. That sounds like a ton. When you break it up over 365 days, it's 60 some odd rooms per night. And based off of that, they said, yeah, we'll refer you to our feasibility experts. We'll refer you to our architect to get going with your design. And so that's where kind of the design came from. In talking though with Marriott, the process is a several month process to actually be accepted, I guess, within their chain specifically. And part of that is also a $75,000 application fee. And so we figured we better see if this is something that the council and the city is interested in before we go too far down that road. But of course, we are investing in elevations and floor plans, as you guys have seen. What we've shown is kind of a modified prototype. They have their prototypical hotels for each hotel type, and that's the prototype for the Town Place Suites. Although we did add a pool in the main level and changed a couple other things that made it just a little bit larger than their prototype. But other than that, it's kind of the standard thing that they recommend. And so we are going to start with the best hotel chain we possibly can get. And ultimately, if Marriott, were to turn down our application, would go to our second pick and our third pick. But of course, we want to align ourselves with the best brand possible to assure our own success.
Well, it makes sense that you need our cooperation as well if you're going to put $75,000 just to apply. And I'm guessing it's pretty similar for all hotel chains, no matter who they are. And I do have to say that this has been in our master plan and one of the goals, the economic goals for the city for the entire time I've been on council. So I'm pleased that we're looking at it, and I hope that we can figure out a way to make it happen. If it needs to be down a little farther so that residents can be comfortable with it, I think that's fabulous too. But yeah, I can see why you got two different people saying, hey, I'll let you apply for 75 grand, but then if we have no commitment from the city, that's a huge risk. So I think we need to be good partners in trying to help wherever we can and balancing that with everything else. That's all.
David, would you like to move us along?
Well, I'm concerned that we haven't talked about the fundamental issue here, and that is there's a reason why hotels are not considered in the mixed use zone. And fundamentally, housing and hotels don't often go together. I mean, everywhere they've been successful, they've been more where they are with the services that hotel guests would be more likely to use, like among restaurants or where there's a bar available. We don't want to suddenly change our ordinance in a way that we can put any old run-of-the-mill motel next to family housing and achieve the mixed use classification. So to me, that's the first and biggest concern, is their hotel was left out of here for a reason. I don't think that it was an oversight. It was left out. And
was it? I don't remember having this discussion about leaving.
I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
I apologize then. I just wanted to make that point. So please come back to that when you get to where you need to be.
So I don't think that the hotel fits in this zone. Beyond that, there's a huge difference between a Marriott and a roadway inn that's just a motel. And so I think there has to be some kind of commitment to what the product would be. I think that if it were to come up and say, well, they didn't come on board 3 months down the line, but we do have this motel that would like to be in here, I don't think that's the same product. So I don't think that we can just kind of blanket make a change without knowing what that would mean, aside from the fact that I don't think it fits. I think that there's a mixed use for a reason, and we did go over those things, and I don't think that it fits at all.
Okay, Jordan?
Ha!
You
Mute
didn't
button.
answer my question though. So can we, when Jordan's done, can we go back?
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you.
So I would like to ask staff, do we know which of these roads is going to connect down to 2000? Is it going to be 300 South, 400 South, or 450 South?
So it'll be 450 South and 300 South is the plan.
So I feel like this plan doesn't work for that, because you have parking along 450 South.
I didn't explain that. That was one of the items in my latest staff report, is that since 450 South is on our master transportation plan, we'd want that to be a public right of way. And I've talked with the applicant about that. So if it's a right of way, you can't have cars backing onto it. That wouldn't be safe. And so there actually would be a revision needed to the plan and kind of massage that part. We don't know exactly how 450 South and 300 South will get to 200 or 2000 West, but we have been working with UDOT to get 2 points where they would be able to, if at that point, if it's a privately owned drive or a public right of way, we're not entirely sure. But I would anticipate that at least 450 South would go straight through as a public right of way. Then 300 South may go down to the next access point onto 193 that we're working on at the very minimum. And then beyond that, it might be a private driveway.
Do we know where those entry points would be along 193?
More or less. It hasn't been 100% finalized with UDOT, but if you were to look at an aerial photograph, there's a turn pocket if you're going north on 2000.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be south of that turn pocket. And then the further south, 450 South has a little bit more leniency. There's an existing curb cut there, but it'd probably go a little bit north of that. So as long as there's enough separation between the two, a couple hundred feet would be, or maybe a little bit more than that, will be fine.
So is UDOT going to work with us on increasing the number of turn-ins along this road?
Yeah, we think so. It really hinders economic development with the access. So we have been working with them. So 1550 West, as you know, is a fully lighted intersection. And the current agreement or current rule for 193 is that there's only one access per half mile, and it's a lighted intersection access. So we're working with them to get at least an access every quarter mile, but the quarter mile access they're saying would only be a right in, right out.
I'm okay with that.
But at least it adds something, you know.
Yep.
It helps.
So that was my first thing, is this doesn't take into account those roads. I have the same discussion point that I brought up with the previous one. Number one is I need to see what the West looks like. I have no idea what's going to be right behind these apartments. I would like to see that before I approve anything. So that's my first thing, is my original concern that we had before has not been resolved. And so that's my primary concern. The secondary concern is I agree we need a hotel. I have always thought we've always planned for it off of the highway, the freeway entrance, somewhere in the area of our restaurants and golf course. So it's an asset. Right now we would be building a hotel and they would go somewhere else because there's no restaurant anywhere close to this location. So I agree that this doesn't fit. This commercial doesn't complement the surrounding area. In fact, as I've heard many people, it's considered actually a detriment to the surrounding area. I don't know if I share the concerns that this will be wholly populated by pedophiles and such. But I do understand that. I do understand their viewpoints of we don't know who's going to be there. So I've heard the concerns. I travel a lot for my work too, and I always try and find a place with restaurants that I can walk to because I hate driving everywhere. And so I don't feel like the hotel fits well here, but I do love the idea of a hotel. So I just don't think it fits well here. And then my last concern is we are building so many apartments right now in the city. We have yet to finish one of them. And I don't feel the need to add 150, 200 more to that list without ever seeing one of them complete. So without at least several of these items being addressed, and I'll relist them. I don't know what the site plan looks like to the west. I don't feel like the hotel quite fits in the MXD zone, at least in this location. If it was near other things that would complement it, I could see it. And then, yeah, I just feel like I want to at least see one apartment complete before we keep approving more and more. So I'm probably not in favor of this at this time. I would like to see that. Like I say, if it was a hotel just by itself, then I'm all in favor of putting it in another part of the city. But I feel like it's just being leveraged to get more apartments, and I'm just not ready for that yet.
To that
Randy, you
point,
wanted to discuss something with Dave.
Yes, about the leaving out hotel out of commercial or something like that with the mixed use. I'm pretty sure it's part of commercial. So I don't remember ever discussion about hotels being in a mixed use or not being in a mixed use, or is one of those definitions of commercial. We didn't have that discussion. So
it doesn't fit.
I don't appreciate these like throwing out some sort of random things as though they're fact when they're not. So I just want to clarify that didn't happen. I do think transition from residential to commercial is going to happen somewhere. So unless you guys want, total single family homes all the way up to our commercial, which nobody's going to appreciate. So
that's not what I was advocating for.
Well, except for that you want to know what's going on the other side before you make that transition. And here's the transition. And I'm not saying it's necessarily all correct at this time or anything, but there has to be a transition from single family homes to commercial.
Well, what concerns me is that there's also a line in it that says, hey, if we move the hotel, we're going to put in another apartment building.
Yeah.
And so it's like I said, I love the idea of the hotel. I am not opposed to the hotel. What I am not in favor of is adding in more higher density until I at least see, first of all, what's around it. I mean, I can see on one side. And the other thing is, I don't feel like when we started this whole MXD, I said I would approve one the first year, and I led with that.
And that's fine that you can feel that way. That's fine, Jordan. You've said that several times. That's okay.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's fine.
And so this is me just
your thought of where you want to go. That's fine.
Thank you.
But that's not necessarily what I think. So
that's okay.
I heard somebody call my name.
Oh, Mayor, I was curious if I could maybe address a few of the things that were brought up by the council.
Yes, and then I'm going to move us on. Without Seth here, we probably need to table this discussion to when he can participate.
Sure. So I took some notes as the council members were talking, and I just wanted to address those things if I could real quick. One, we very much did think about what it was going to look like to the west, as we came up with this proposal. In the prior one, I think everybody was kind of nervous to bring up that hospital was planned to the west. And so while we might not have an exact site plan, we have kind of taken into account what the use is going to be. And again, that's a very complementary thing with a hospital, with a hotel. Also, the thought that I guess hotel is being used as leverage for the apartments. Really, it's kind of the other way. The Syracuse is kind of an immature market for a hotel. And that's something that we've been learning as we're studying this out. And so really it's the apartments that are being leveraged to make the hotel possible. We couldn't, and that's why you haven't seen a hotel proposed by other people just as a standalone. And I understand that you'd be happy with that, Jordan, but really it's the multifamily that makes that possible. Also, a couple other thoughts about it being the wrong location. The first feasibility consultant we've talked to said really the biggest driver for hotels in our area, in this part of northern Davis County, is the base. And so being on 193 and kind of a straight shot to the base, was kind of a strategic thing. And parcels within, the city center we did look at, but we're all too small again. To say that the hotel doesn't go with residential, and I believe Councilwoman Bolduc was making this point, a hotel goes with a hospital and goes with this new commercial node that is emerging, on 2000 and 193. And the higher density residential is being used to buffer those commercial uses, down as we get to the single family. And so again, there was a lot of thought with that. To address Councilmember Mon's concern about commitment, while we might not be able to have a brand commitment, we certainly will have a commitment to a hotel. And while we might not be able to commit to the name, I think we can commit to the form of the hotel in a lot of ways, whether it's square footage, number of rooms, number of stories, a general aesthetic. I think we can commit to all of those things so that, you're not, so that I guess the concern of a motel, for example, being proposed later, that we can commit to things that will, I guess, prevent that. I mean, when you're talking about a 4-story, 50,000 square foot hotel that we've proposed, I mean, you're talking $10 to $11 million build. And so, you're not going to be able to bring in, the complete, budget, kind of crime trap that people are worried about. I mean, it's going to be new quality and construction and really can't be done cheap if we commit to a certain type of hotel. Let's see. I think that's at least most of the concerns that I was able to jot down. Oh, on council member, let's see, Savage's comment about 450. Yes, we have talked with Noah about that. And, we would be willing to commit to making that a right of way. And, we've already talked to staff about some adjustments there parking wise that could be made to work for the city and for us. But anyway, I know there's only so much dialogue we can do in these meetings, but we have really thought this out and planned this out. We're happy to answer any more questions from public or from staff or from council members, in the upcoming weeks leading up to additional meetings.
Okay, as I mentioned, I'd like to table this without Councilman Teague being with us tonight. I would speak to the thing that Josh mentioned, that we have two sons that live out of state, and one in Medford, Oregon, and one in Spokane, and we never stay at their home. We actually stay in a hotel nearby. So I can see that happening with the multifamily next door, and new families having moved into Syracuse, but parents coming from out of state will need to have a place to stay. So, okay, let's table this one. Let's move on. Number 4, Noah. Is that tied to this one?
Yes, it's related. This is the option if the city didn't want to do a development agreement, they could amend the text, which he applied for. So technically we would want to, at some point, give render a decision on the application that he submitted.
So what we're saying here is we would add hotel to the permitted uses of mixed use.
That and some other exceptions for related to the architecture to make the project possible the way he wants to do it. Planning Commission is not in favor of this option. If they recommend, if you're going to do it through a development agreement, so it doesn't apply to all mixed use or all of the mixed use projects.
That was the Planning Commission's recommendation. Council, are we unified on that, or do we need to discuss it?
I'd like to look at it closer because we haven't even really, this is our first chance of looking at the suggestions.
Okay, let's put that on the agenda for the work session in October.
Okay.
I would also like to recommend one thing I think was an oversight. I feel like the mixed use zone, at least when we originally were talking about it, was usually going to be along an arterial. I noticed there is no restrictions on where the mixed use can be placed within the city beyond what's in the general plan. I think we do want to add in some of those types of restrictions that they are along. We can pick whether it's an arterial, a major collector, or something like that, just to try and offer some guidance to locations.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay, Noah, would you add that to our discussion?
Mayor, could I say one thing on this agenda item?
Yes.
Okay, and I apologize. I don't want to be too repetitive, but I just, from the applicant side, our preference would be to go that development agreement route. We think that's best for the city too, but we did want to leave, options open for the council to go the direction that they wanted. Also, if I might just offer some congratulations to the city. I don't know how many of you saw, but Money Magazine annually posts a list of the best places to live nationally, and Syracuse City was named at number 6, on their list for the entire nation. And I don't think I've heard that come up in any of the public comments or any of the chatter. And so anyway, I just want to make sure they get some airtime, because is that almost 20-year resident of Syracuse. I think that's pretty awesome. And your leadership and the people, and there's a lot of things that go into that, but I think you guys as well as the community members really deserve a pat on the back for making that happen. And the neighbors on this project are probably the nicest neighborhood I've worked with in that city. A lot of very level-headed, reasonable people that are solutions focused and aren't just emotional. And so anyway, kudos to Syracuse, kudos to the city, number 6 best in the nation.
Thanks, Josh.
That was a big deal. I was excited about that.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Josh.
All right, no, let's move on to item 5.
Okay, this next one is Aspire at Canterbury Park. It's another PRD. Same thing as with the RC Willie property. You guys have already seen this with the rezone and preliminary plat. They're now progressing on to final plat. And because it's a PRD, you guys will see it.
But there's no changes here. So if there's not any changes, there's not a lot to discuss.
Nope.
Would we put this on a consent agenda?
I would agree to that.
All right, Cassie, would you put that on a consent? Item 6, discussion regarding town center improvements.
Okay, last month we talked about the clock tower and town center, and
Save the clock tower.
There were lots of great ideas that came up. Some of them were maybe bigger than what was originally anticipated. So one of the big ideas was, hey, well, why don't we just take the whole clock tower? And I said, well, that's private property. Let me see if he would even be open to that. So we met out on site with him. He says, yeah, you can have it if you want it. And so that's an option. I also took some pictures. Hopefully you had a chance to look at some of the issues. The town center is looking a little shabby. It needs some investment. The good news is the main landowner. There's actually multiple landowners, but Nadeem is the main landowner for the majority of the public kind of areas. He's on board to get it cleaned up. He's a willing partner with us, but we've already budgeted $200,000 is really what I would like from you tonight is some direction. The 200,000 was originally supposed to be used for what we call parking lot improvements, but you know, if you're okay with it, I would like to really work with the landowners and get this place looking nice. So I just need to know if you want me to come back with every, you know, for example, to fix the clock tower, that's $3,700. I mean, do you want me to come back with every item, or, you know, what level of involvement do you want on this? And then we also need some more guidance on some of the big picture items. Do we want to take over the clock tower? Do we want to redo the landscaping? You know, there's some decisions to be made there, but we don't necessarily have to make them all right now. This could be a series of multiple things, you know, over the next year to try to get it all cleaned up.
Question. Oh, sorry.
David?
So I think that the landscaping concerns me only in that it sets a precedent that in public spaces, the city would then be responsible for that. I don't want to see that. I do want to see it cleaned up, but I think that we have to hold landowners responsible for that part of it. As far as the clock tower goes, it's a one-off situation in our city. And I think the question for me is it an opportunity for us to do something that we've been wanting to do in the city? Because if we take it over, I would want to explore, you know, all of the things that we talked about that we wish we could have. Is there a place for central advertising? Is that a possibility that we can, you know, announce events with some kind of marquee? Is it something that we, you know, certainly if we're going to have clocks, we want them to work. But we have clocks at other places in the city too. I don't know that we need it right there, but that's not the question. The question is, can we make something special out of it? I think we can, and I think we can for not too much money. So if he would just turn it over to us, if we could figure out how we could afford to make it into something, then the answer is yes. If we don't think we can afford to make it into something special, then we don't want it, but we want him to clean it up and fix it. But on the landscaping, I 100% agree it needs to be done. There's a lot of people that think it needs to be done, but I don't want the city going around fixing that for people, because as soon as we do it here, the very next thing we're going to have suggestion is why doesn't the city go pay to clean up the movie theater? Because that's been mentioned hundreds of times now as a blighted area. And if we're going to hold them responsible for cleaning that up, we kind of have to hold this landowner responsible for cleaning it up. Just the consistency is what I'm concerned about.
Corinne?
I would, my only concern with taking this on is the fact that it almost feels like we're picking certain businesses to help, but then again, you know, it's part of those funds, kind of similar to what Mr. Mon was talking about with helping the movie theater. But I do believe that we need to do something, and maybe it's a one-time thing. I don't know that we should take it on for forever. That doesn't feel right to me. That's all.
Lisa?
I definitely think this is the perfect time for us to do what we've talked about, which is branding our town center. And even if it goes so far as to completely change the look of this tower and remove the things that are going to be maintenance for long-term, maybe cover the entire thing with the farmhouse look and give us the lower maintenance products because as I'm looking at this and thinking, how long has this existed in a dilapidated state? That is really poor. That's surprisingly poor ability to maintain itself. You know, that's just a high maintenance building, and that it shouldn't be, because it shouldn't be a lot of wear and tear on this. But I agree that we shouldn't take on landscaping. That does become an issue, because that wouldn't mean that we were taking that property. It would just mean that we were taking on the burden of fixing that landscaping in perpetuity. And so I would love to consider branding this, because it is town center and it is a very, very particular corner that is seen from every angle. I would really like to look into and have Noah or somebody on the staff look into some options for revamping that completely, not taking on landscaping, but it definitely needs to be fixed, to even just get rid of the water features altogether and just go into something that, as we've talked about, lower or no water features. We could once again use this as an opportunity to set the standard for saying we'd like this in these areas, and not be wasteful in our resources. But I was disturbed, to be honest. It's really not disturbed. I was sad to see that this really is dilapidated, and it should have had a higher standard all along. And maybe a lot of people aren't walking along that curb very often, but gosh, I think that we could do a lot with just a fresh idea completely. I am not for fixing it as it is right now. I don't want to see stucco again. I don't want to see a continuation of maintenance of a clock that seems to, we've already talked about how there's one person that can fix it and it's this much money. And that was just outrageous to me, to have something that's just doesn't reap the benefit of the investment. So I'd like to look at this with fresh eyes completely, take over the actual building itself, even if we just fix it and give it a fresh lift as a city, and then not be in charge of landscaping.
Jordan?
All right. So this is actually one of the motivating factors where I think we need to put in all of our commercial zones, not just that you have to mow your weeds, that they need to be kept free of noxious weeds and other volunteer plants. I would like to see that added throughout commercial and industrial zones so that we can present a good face, because this is, I agree with Lisa. As I look through this, it just makes me sad. We need to hold our businesses to a higher standard if they're not willing to do it themselves. And so I don't want to make it punitive, but I do want to say, look, you need to weed. You need to do the basic things. We have 3 or 4 businesses that just have kind of forgotten that business is more than just running a building, that it's and where we're going to be having some very high traffic in the next upcoming years, especially with the freeway opening and a temple. We need to put our best foot forward, whatever you want to call it. So on that light, I would like to see those amendments changed to our commercial zones, that it's more than just mowing weeds. We really want the areas to be maintained. The other thing is, I want to fix that clock. I love clock towers, and I would like to see it fixed. I think that is a fairly inexpensive fix, especially where it'll hook it up to a common controller. That just seems like easy money to fix something immediately that we take a lot of flack for. And then I do want to, I think, taking over the clock tower, if they're willing to gift that to the city, I think this is a good opportunity for us. I think we can do some pretty neat things. I would be interested in seeing a farm theme or whatever it may end up being. I think that we can do a lot with it. And I would like to give, especially where we have some people out there looking at signage and things in the city, this could be an opportunity to do a nice monument. So I definitely want to change the parking lot. So if that's what you're asking, first of all, yes, fix the parking lot, take over the clock tower, fix the clock. Don't try and replace it, my fellow council members. But I do want to see what else we can do on the rest of it. And yeah, I do not want to take over landscaping, but I do want to clarify the language in our ordinances to say mowing weeds is not sufficient for a business in Syracuse.
I have one additional question that I think has to be answered before we address the clock tower. And moving forward, yes, we do want to talk about that. But I think that we need to understand what the legal obligation is for the advertising that is there. If we have to maintain some certain level or some accessibility to everybody who is within a certain complex, then I think we need to know that that's part of what we have to be able to do. If there's not, we could consider the fact that maybe that's a lease, or maybe it doesn't need to be there. I'm not suggesting what goes there. I just want to know what commitments we're already grandfathered into. I'm, again, not suggesting what it is. I want to understand where we start.
It's a reasonable request.
That's a great question. I can look into it. I don't know if we were to take over the clock tower, would all of the signs have to stay? Could we take them down? Could we,
Yeah, we just need to know.
Location.
Well, and most
I don't
likely
know. I
they
can
paid
find that
for
out.
those. Most likely those businesses have paid for those signs. So my guess is they would not be very happy with us just taking them down. I would be worried
The city
about
actually paid for the signs, I believe.
for the businesses.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
Holy
the
smokes.
property owner indicated he does have a current lease for those signs, and they pay a certain amount each year.
Okay, the businesses
But
do.
we don't know what the term is on that contract, but we can find that out.
So we would know that we would take that over if we take over the clock towers. That's, or is that understood that we would now take over the clock tower and he'd keep that lease?
Yeah, I think it depends on how their contract's written.
Okay.
I would like to build into the lease a periodic refresh of those signs.
Yeah, there's some that are pretty burnt out.
Literally.
Yes, and really quickly though, if we change the whole facade, doesn't it kind of need to like coordinate with the businesses that it's sitting amongst? I don't know if we change the whole facade.
I think it needs to coordinate with the facility, sure. And that would be one of the considerations.
Well, there was just, you mentioned about farmhouse, but I don't think we can totally change the idea, unfortunately.
I just wanted to tell Lisa that I'd be willing to listen.
I'm open to whatever.
But you can find the red brick, red and brown can combine just fine if you're just changing up some trim, and you can even go with a warmer toned hardy plank or something, but you can, those can merge. I am just not interested in going back to faulty, this whole
high maintenance,
faulty, just looks dilapidated in so many ways. And I think that we can do it.
And along with those agreements, my guess is that all the businesses around there pay into some sort of a maintenance fee for that property. So where is that money going? And or is there a fund, and or who's supposed to be maintaining, and who's gathering those funds for said maintenance that isn't happening?
Yeah, I don't think.
I would say that's a great idea, but I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't happen, because if the city paid for them to begin with, it probably was overlooked about doing something like that. I'm not saying it is or isn't. I'll have to look.
Well, I can't imagine they'd be that negligent to say, oh, I'm going to put in trees and a fountain, and then nobody's going to maintain this. That would just be total negligence. Right?
Yeah,
surprisingly it happens.
They own the property, and they know where they need to maintain.
Yes.
There's not a shared maintenance fund that I know of, like some of them you see. So what I think I'm hearing is yes, we want the tower, but I think we do have a little bit of homework to do to figure out if and when we get it, what are we going to do with it?
Yeah.
Do we tear it down?
That doesn't have to be decided tonight. That's okay. But if you want me to talk with Nadeem about getting the tower, I will.
Yes, please.
Yep.
Just explore it.
Like break it down into what it would cost to tear it down completely and start fresh, as opposed to what it would be like to just revamp materials and things like that, and keep that clock that Jordan is so committed to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Jordan, but I don't want something I have to keep repairing.
No, it has to be. There has to be some.
I don't want a money pit.
It is, yeah.
No, the key component here is whether Nadeem would gift this to the city, and he talked that way when we met with him on that day.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then that gives us a stage to begin planning other things. So why don't you start there, and then do whatever research you need to do, and let's bring this back for the work session in October.
And then I would like to hear the council. What are your thoughts on updating commercial zones to being more than just mowing weeds?
I agree. I think it's a
Well-
separate issue than the one that's on the table tonight, but I
I
agree.
disagree.
You
Well,
think
they-
it's the same?
I think that updating that ordinance would help businesses not be able to leave dead trees for 10 years and let all of the sticker weeds grow in around a waterfall. And I think
So I agree
it's
with
all
you
over
that
the
needs to be
city.
done. I'm just not sure where it's most effectively done, but I agree it needs to be done.
Well,
And we need some accountability.
commercial, yeah, sorry to interrupt. Commercial to me is different for regulation. That's a lot easier for us to regulate, isn't it? Than single family and personal habitats.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying
That's why I would
commercial
say-
is an easy place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Just different than if we were trying to regulate a home, but I do
Yeah.
think it should be a no-brainer for commercial.
Gordon, it seems like we're in accordance with you. Let's look at that, but it is, like Dave said, a separate issue. But let's put that on a calendar to discuss. Okay. Item number 7, properties and unincorporated properties and their utilities. We had that today. We need to discuss that a little bit going forward. How do we respond to that? Noah?
Yes. Thanks for the feedback of the town center stuff, by the way. I'll run with that. So in a related issue to the water line stuff, we've had various homes that are not part of subdivisions be built on these kind of country roads. And throughout time, sometimes we require them to do curb and gutter and a sidewalk, and sometimes we don't. And so I wanted to bring it before you. I think I have a potential solution, might be easier and easy fix. Let me see if I can share my screen real quick. Might be helpful. Let's see here. Can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Let me run through a few examples to kind of get you up to speed. This is on 2700 South, pretty far west. That first guy that asked for water was right there. So this guy is building in the county, and the county required a will serve letter. And we said, yeah, we'll provide the water, but you have to develop curb gutter sidewalk along your frontage. Now, his frontage isn't very wide, so that's not really a big deal at all. But if we look in other areas, like this other guy that wanted a secondary or his culinary line, he plans on subdividing his lot. This red line is the city boundary. If the county doesn't let him build in the county and says you have to annex, he's going to be an island, which you can't do for annexation. You'd have to pull in other properties so that it's a contiguous parcel. You can see none of these guys have curb gutter and sidewalk along here. But if you go down the street, you'll start seeing some other examples of how it works. This one is actually not on 2700 South, but this is a parcel that wasn't part of a subdivision. And it's on a state road, but we didn't require him to do curb gutter sidewalk. And sometimes it's even paving the shoulder, which adds even more cost. Here's back to 2700 South, where you look at this home that was built, they have curb gutter sidewalk, and it just kind of sits out there as an island. They didn't. They did. These guys, the house is off the screen, but these guys did. They didn't. This is a new home that didn't. There's going to be another home right here that would be required to put some sidewalk here, but then it ends. So the issue is our ordinance says that those, what we call improvements, curb gutter sidewalk, that sort of thing, are required in subdivisions. And so sometimes they argue, well, I'm not part of a subdivision. I'm just this lot that I want to build a house on. So if we were to change the name from subdivision to developments or something like that to clarify that it does apply, that would be a solution. But first, I wanted to know if you guys think that that's an issue. If we don't exact the improvements from them up front and have them do them right when they do the building permit, it'll be left for other taxpayers to pay for in the future as like a backfill kind of project that the city will have to come through. So in my opinion, it's probably better to do it up front, but obviously we've done it both ways. And so I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
Well, I just point out that when Farmington later required people to go back and do curb gutter sidewalk, it was really ugly because it imposed some very large expenses that people were not expecting. To that extent, I think it's easier to tell them that that's an expectation when they do new construction, because that's easy for them to roll into the cost of building. Whereas if you go back 20 years later and say, hey, you've got $20,000 or, whatever in improvements, you don't just have that on hand. So that's, I think that it's wise to be proactive when you can get it, just like we do with water metering now. If you require the new construction, then we won't have to go back and retrofit those.
I just have to ask about how do we, along Antelope, is the state going to do all of those improvements at, pretty much on this taxpayer's dime as well? As they expand Antelope, is that how that functions? Because they don't have any curb and gutter along Antelope.
Yeah. Yeah, they're planning on doing sidewalk along there.
So that ends up being, you and me who paid for that in the end when they expand the road. Yeah. I do remember talking with Brigham Miller about the situation in Farmington, and he said, well, I paid for mine, everybody should pay for theirs, but there is a certain amount of financing that is difficult later on. It's easier to put it onto a home loan than it is to get a loan for curb and gutter from the bank, I'm sure. So yeah, and upfront would probably be best. The question is that, do we want to do this as the road is expanded, similar to Antelope as well? Do we know pretty much, is this where the frontage of the road is going to be, or is the road going to be wider? And, are we going to be tearing up something that we've just put in? That's just another thought out there.
That's a good point that you bring up, but correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it the responsibility, if there is curb and gutter and UDOT widens a road, they have to put it back in?
Yes, and that's what I'm saying though,
Yeah.
Is that are we pretty sound in where the edge of this road needs to be, or are we going to just be tearing it up in a few years and replacing it anyway? That's the question, is that as we improve this road, what do we want in place, or are we just going to tear that up anyway?
What I'm suggesting is that if we get it done now, then it's no longer our responsibility or the homeowner, because the UDOT would be paid, except for this is
No, I'm talking about
if it were a UDOT road, it would be their responsibility.
Right. I'm talking about along 2700 and
Yeah, it's not their
4500
road.
West, and
Yeah, there are roads.
as we improve those roads as a city, if we're not sure where those boundaries of those roads are going to be, because like 2700, there's parts of it that are very narrow and there's a ditch along the one side and so forth. And we need to be pretty darn sure of where those boundaries are, or we're going to be ripping it up, even though we're telling somebody they have to put it in.
Now, there's always a chance that it gets put in the wrong place, but we do have our transportation master plan in a standard road cross section that they would build.
That's exactly where I'm driving. Do we know? And if we do, then okay, then that would be all right. If we're planning on 5 years from now expanding it, then we shouldn't talk about that right now.
I have a question.
Classification changes.
So let's say that one of these houses has a ditch in front of their house.
A lot of them do. Yeah.
Are we now asking them to pipe that ditch and put a sidewalk in and gutter?
We had to when we lived in Hiram. We paid for it. We got a big, huge pipe from Nucor Steel and put it in. And
yeah, we would be doing that. That would be part of it. And that's expensive. You're right.
Reinforced concrete pipe is not cheap. And if there's a shoulder that they have to pave and put down road base for, and it's not just $20,000. It could be
A lot.
So,
Yeah,
so
well,
the
according to
question
some of the
along
signs in
lines-
Farmington, some were $50,000. So
how many properties like this are we dealing with? And why has this even, I want to say, why have we allowed this? But why are there so many unannexed areas and properties? Because just we've all been saying, so many of us are paying into our tax base and doing all of these things. And so how much are they funding our city and they're receiving benefits from the city? I mean, there just needs to be a sense of equality and consistency. And it concerns me too that we'll have a property without it, a property with it. That's really unfair to the people who have to come up with it and the other people don't. I mean, there just needs to be, so how many more properties are we dealing with and how long does this go on? And will we ever see an end to it? And do we need to quickly address it?
Yeah.
Well, Robert probably has a better handle on the road situation of which roads don't have curb and gutter. But from what I understand, 2700 south all the way out, minus the subdivision here, there's nothing. And
So-
then 4500 west, you know, all of this in here.
So I can throw this out there because we actually had this discussion recently. The unincorporated county portion of the sewer district is really just what's on 2700 South, and it equates to 22 homes that make up that voting district for that one representative. So, yeah, we had a big discussion as to why one person from Layton represents 75,000 people and one person from the unincorporated represents 22 people, but we're all treated equal on the board. So
you can see this guy right here. This was before my time, but he annexed and he brought in all of that so that he's contiguous.
He's got sidewalk.
And he did sidewalk and curb and gutter. Looks like he just did road base instead of paved shoulder.
But he didn't do the horse field or the cow pasture because he didn't want to put the sidewalk in.
Yeah,
Well, that's not
all of
annexed.
that.
So it's still county land. He doesn't have to.
That's
Yeah.
right.
We have a development out here. It's called Distant Serenade. You know, they're going to put when it's in a subdivision, it's
You
easy
have to. Yeah.
because the definition's there. So what we'd be looking at is a text amendment to expand the subdivision requirements to all of these. And then the other issue is when this pops up, do we allow developments in the county, assuming the county would even do it, without being annexed, where we provide their services in water, but then we don't require frontage improvements. And then of course they don't pay property taxes to Syracuse because they're not part of the city.
But they do use all of our services because while they don't pay for our fire department would be the one that responds. While they don't pay for our police department would be the one that responds. So that has been a long time discussion. And I can tell you that before I joined the council, because these people were in my ward and they were pretty hot about the fact that a previous mayor, 2 mayors ago, approached them about annexing and they did not like the idea of paying the taxes. So you can see that they're still not annexed, and that is the issue. But
forcing these guys to annex that would be very controversial. But we could change the subdivision ordinance to apply to new construction, whether it's in a subdivision or not.
Well, if it's not part of our city boundaries, how can we enforce that? Are we asking the county to do it?
Well, and then I guess the other part is the policy of if you're gonna try building in the county without annexing, that you at least have to do the road improvements.
Well,
anything cuts down on the cost of the city in providing for these homes should be considered, because if there is anything that we're going to have to come up behind and sweep up after them and spend taxpayer dollars of the people across the street in their behalf, I mean, that's just a fairness issue. And so anything that we're requiring from our regular citizens in order to receive those services, we should require from the people, even if they're not annexed in. They should be required to provide the same things that we require from our members or our citizens who are receiving and paying for those same services.
So the only leverage we really have in any of this is our services, and most of them we can't. So, I mean, do we increase our water fee for out of?
We did. So if you're
That's
if you're a non-citizen, you pay a higher rate.
But just barely.
You're right.
Yeah.
But that's why it's justified.
$5 or something.
How much was it? Sorry.
It was like 30 cents.
Yeah, I think it's like $5 a month, but I'd have to fact check that.
So pretty much
Fact
what we're
check
doing
myself.
is we're actually negotiating with the county. Is that right, Noah? Because we have no actual enforceability on this new property proposal.
Right.
The leverage comes at the building permit stage. So if the county is going to issue a building permit, they won't
Right.
issue it unless the city offers a will serve letter for utilities, because the county doesn't have any. So if we withhold the will serve letter and
Wow.
make it contingent upon them building curb, gutter, sidewalk, or other improvements, or shoulder, or piping.
Well, if you really want to tick off a portion of the city, you just let Stan know and he will be right. So that would do it. That would do it. I love Stanley. He's my friend, by the way. So it's okay. But he will fight for, yeah.
Fight
So where do we go from here?
I think we need to implement something that makes this more consistently fair. And if it needs to be that we charge for emergency services, knowing that they will be taken care of by our emergency personnel. If we charge for the water, that if they're going to be asking to be on our system, then there should be a compensatory charge. I'm not as concerned about curb and gutter as I am about paying for the services that they're receiving. And if they're not paying property taxes, it really is, it's just like what we had come before us tonight, where we don't want to say you can't have culinary water. So we're really placed in a position of needing to provide these services for them, but they're not placed in a position of needing to compensate for them. So I'm not sure if it's the curb and gutter that I'm so concerned about as much as I am concerned of paying for those services, water, as well as emergency personnel and roads and all the things that they're all appreciating and using but not paying for.
Sounds like it's a good deal if you can get it.
If I can clear one thing up though, and I may be wrong, Aaron could fix this, but I think if we respond to an emergency, then they get charged just like we would charge somebody who's out of our service district. The problem is that there's no compensation for the upkeep to even have the service, because they don't pay for that. They would only pay if there was an emergency.
If they used it.
Yeah. So that's, our citizens don't get that. They want to have them on the ready. That's a cost. That's part of your property tax. So yeah, that's where just to clear that up, I think that they would have to pay if there were an incident, but I'm not sure that, that doesn't cover our need to have them on the ready.
So it sounds like you guys would rather bump it up a notch and say, if you want our services, you should be annexed. If it's a new house.
So
yes.
Let me throw this out there. I do know that I've talked to 2 of the 3 commissioners about this subject, and they're of the opinion that we need to move, like Weber County did, to having no properties that are not part of a city. They're not going to make that move right now, but that's what they would prefer, which would mean that anybody who's in the county has to annex into the nearest city. Of course,
So
that
what
riles
is
up
the
Stan
reason-
to no end.
Why do we have so many areas that were not divided into a city?
Because they were farms and they chose not to be.
And we
So is
didn't
it
want
going-
and we didn't want to fight.
Okay. So I didn't realize that I would just expect that as they divide up city boundaries, that they would say all of this land would be part of Syracuse. All of this land is West Point. But okay. But so that's kind of interesting that they'll say, I don't want to be annexed in, but I want the services.
Yeah,
I mean, their
and
fear is that they're gonna have more property
they
tax.
are,
than
they are
would.
designated that if they annex into a city, it would be ours because they can't touch another city. So
Mhm.
yes, they are designated as future us, but they don't have to be annexed until they want to be.
At some point, I think it probably makes a lot of sense to do something like that
Yeah, I agree with you.
someday when
But
we're
Do
wanting
we pay the expense?
when we want to fight. That's what we'll probably end up with, something like that to be in the
Yeah.
city. And then you have a nice
Understood.
clean boundary, all the houses are in. But I don't think that's quite ready yet, but if somebody wants to build a house, if that's what our policy should be, that if you want to build a new house, annex the city.
Into the city. I
And
think,
yeah, in the future of
Yeah.
anything else, we probably outside of that area that's already built, any new area that needs to be built, we probably just say they have to be required to be annexed in. That we're not, because that would mean we'd have to build utility services and maintain them towards something. In this case, the service already runs down the
Already
road.
there.
But
Mhm.
Now draw the future Syracuse boundary.
Hmm?
Now draw the future
Single.
Syracuse boundary that goes all the way to Gentile.
Oh, down here?
yeah,
Yeah.
So you're saying
all the way down.
something like
Yeah.
that?
It's gonna
Yeah.
be like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just know that there's
Isn't it
not-
going to go along 4,000 all the way to Gentile?
well, so right now, only the strip next to 4,000 is incorporated because the rest of it's sewer plant land.
Yeah.
And with no building on it, there's no real-
Need.
yeah, there's no benefit there. It's
Yeah.
agricultural land.
Nobody walks along there because, well,
There's nowhere to
there's no
walk.
home. There's no homes, and it is a good little biking lane though.
So council, maybe could I ask a question? Are you all good with if somebody wants to build new, they need to annex?
Yes.
Is that good?
Yep.
If they want services.
If they want services?
Yep.
So I can work on this with planning commission if you want. We'll bring it back.
Okay.
We'll make
I
it
don't know
next
that you
month.
say if you want services because, excuse me, because they're going to want services, but what are they going to say? Well, no, we don't want services. But then when they need them, they need them. I think.
No,
it
they just can't build unless they
Annex.
Yeah, that's.
annex.
Yeah, I agree.
And from what I understand, there's only like one more house that doesn't actually already have a water line out there. I think there's probably a lot of wells, but they also have a culinary water feed, at least
Yeah.
from what I hear from Robert. So
And then, yeah,
hopefully we only get one more request to actually do what we've had this summer.
And would we then require them to annex
I
to
think
get
if
the service?
If somebody's like well dries up and it's an existing house, I think that's different than if somebody's wanting.
Yeah, you're right.
I agree that's different than new build.
Okay, but we seem unified on if you want to build new, you got to annex.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on to G. Robert,
Thanks, guys.
let's talk about storm drain.
Okay. Council Stormwater Management Program is a program we've had in place since, I think it was 2003, when it was first required from the state of Utah Department of Water Quality. That requirement, that law is still in place. They issue a permit to every city who's required to get a Utah, a permit. So the permit's good for 5 years. So every 5 years, they update the permit requirements and then require that the cities just renew that stormwater management program. So this is our renewed program, 2021. It's good through 2026. A lot of this is the same without much change from the previous one we had in 2015. Probably the best or the most informative part of this would be appendix. Let me get to that. Appendix A, which is on page 183 of the packet. And it's just a web link to the actual permit spelled out. It's like 80 pages long. But I have taken that and summarized it in Appendix K, and that is on page 188 in the packet. Let me just, nope, not 188. Well, Appendix K. So let's see. Okay, that's 213, page 213 in your packet. So I've taken it and summarized it into a table format of every single requirement in that permit and what we are doing to achieve that requirement. Everything that is required is something that is already programmed and we've already been doing. Some of these we've tweaked a little bit to improve as we look at it each time. For instance, one on page, well, it's page 214 in the packet, but page 53 in the document talks about how we need to provide information of how to develop a stormwater pollution plan for commercial developments. And so, so our idea of improving that, rather than just sending out brochures or having things available for people to pick up, would be, in addition to that, we're looking at maybe talking with the West Davis Chamber of Commerce as a new idea once a year, and just putting that out there for commercial users, and talk about things like how do you store salt, and for winter, how do you apply fertilizer without overdoing, fertilizer out into the street, things like that. So that's just a for instance. I do want to draw your attention to page 188 in the packet. That is an appendix that is an interlocal agreement. And this is a requirement of the permit that we work together as a coalition in the Davis, and we're in the Davis County Stormwater Coalition, along with all of the other cities in the county. And this agreement is something that we had in 2015. It just expired and we would need to renew it. So this is in a draft form, and this is something that I would also bring to you in a business meeting on October 12th for your consideration to review and approve. So there's kind of two parts to this. One is the agreement, which in this document is in draft form in the appendix. And then two is just the overall stormwater management program for 2021. Once this gets, so we're not approving it tonight. This is really just your first look at it. It's really a big document, but it's mostly the same as what we already have in place right now. So just with a few minor little tweaks like what I had mentioned to you.
Yes, you mentioned to us earlier in the year that you were going to introduce us to this in phases, and this is just the fall phase. We've got to, it's got to be approved by December. Is that when it's due?
No, that was the water conservation plan. So no, this one is actually due October 12th to be adopted. So we really don't, have a choice on that. The permit actually requires that from the state. The water conservation plan is due December 31st, but I put that one on your next October 12th meeting too, just because it's complete and ready to go anyway. We'll get done with that.
Okay. Well, let's put.
I can take questions or have discussion, but it's basically just in here for you to peruse through. Obviously, in the next couple of weeks, if you have questions, as if you're reading through it and you're wondering what this is about, go ahead and give me a call or email or whatever, and I'm happy to sit down and explain things to you.
I like the stormwater pollution prevention plan. That's pretty cool. I mean, it's easy to look at and go, oh, I got it. Nice.
Is that the appendix for city properties?
Yeah, well, and also specifically for the utilities department, because if you're dealing with chemicals and everything, I'm sure you're like having to make sure that things are isolated and taken care of. So
Yeah, yep,
And then-
that's another requirement for city facilities. That's Appendix M, page 236 of your packet. I think that's
And
what
I
you're
love-
talking about.
yeah, and I love your suggestion of sending out things regularly to businesses, because, you know, what if a business changes hands, for instance, and then they aren't up on those kinds of things? It's really good.
Mhm.
Right. Hey, I have
Yeah.
a real quick question, Robert. What happens if the secondary water's off and they start to use culinary water to water their lawns?
Like with a hose and a
Mhm.
sprinkler head of some kind of hose.
Do we have any kind of a fallback on that? Do we have a way to monitor that?
Yeah, it would be metered.
So
They pay for it.
meters, yeah, the culinary water is all metered, so we would know if there's a higher usage of
Okay.
culinary water. I would suspect there probably will be. I won't know that, and that actually dovetails into the water conservation plan. And since you've already seen the draft, I didn't put it on this agenda, but I'll bring it for a final. You'll see it again on the October 12th meeting. But I won't have the water use for 2021 because, I'll have to wait till the December report and get that in January, then I can update that graph. But
Okay.
yes, I anticipate a higher culinary water use, not only for what you mentioned, Lisa, but because our secondary water was kind of cut short this season, but also there's a lot of construction, and there's construction water being used for dust control and soil compaction. We have had some fires, so there's a little more consumption there too. I anticipate a little bit higher culinary water use. Like you say, in that report, it showed like 50 gallons per person per day.
So if that
So-
is, then we have a way to track it. I just wondered
Mhm.
if that's something else we want to start informing and teaching the public about, not to do that, because I know that in a different city, somebody I was talking to, they said, "Oh yeah, I just use culinary now because our water's been turned off since the 1st of September." And I thought, well, I get it for that whole month that you're gonna die, you're gonna kill some lawns there, but boy, it just seems counterintuitive to be trying to conserve water, and then we go to the culinary and the more expensive and the metered and and you just are wiping out our system some more. So anyway, I just wondered if we had a way to track that, and if we are tracking that, and if we can increase our education on that.
So I share your concern. The tough thing, metering, sure, is a great way. I guess the trouble with that is, you don't know about it until after it's been done. But we could certainly put out some public information on Facebook or whatever to give good water to continue to encourage good water conservation.
You
I
will
think
see
that's not bad.
an increased usage for anyone with larger animals too, like those with horses and or any farm animals. They will be using culinary now.
Yeah.
So it happens.
Yeah. So good point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. We'll see you on the 12th of October.
Okay.
Okay. Steve, are you with us? Yep,
I am.
Thanks, Steve. Let's talk about fraud.
Okay, let me share my screen really quick.
Is that a
Cassie,
golf course tan you're sporting, Steve? Is that what I said?
Yeah, I went golfing today. Yeah.
Nice.
I don't get tan. It's either white or red for me though. So
I'm just pulling your leg.
You could do a spray tan.
Cassie, can you let me share my screen, please?
Steve's at a conference in St. George.
Nice.
Well, in your packets, I'll just start. You guys have seen this before. It is, oh, there we go.
Steve, you can share.
Got it. Thanks. Okay. So we go through this every year. This is a new requirement that the state auditors have started last year, where we do an annual fraud risk assessment review. We go through a scoring sheet, a summary. If you remember last year, we were at 330. We did increase that to 335 this year by making some changes to our control questionnaires. We had some credit card statements we now are having reviewed by the mayor and also by Brody. So that was fixed. So on the second page here, it goes through the questionnaire of your separation of duties. And it's not uncommon to not have a yes in every column. The important thing is if you have a no, the MC stands for a mitigating control. So if you answered no, like on this one, utility clerks can also receive cash. And so if there's adjustments on accounts, there's got to be an independent review done. And that's done by me to make sure that they're not taking money, adjusting utility accounts and not getting caught. So there is a mitigating control on that, number 3. But the rest of these, you can see they're all marked yes. And there's a lot more that goes into this than just a one-page questionnaire, just so everyone understands that. It is a whole environment that we go through. We make sure that we do have separation of duties with different job functions so that not one individual is doing everything from cash collection to bank recs and disbursements. So that's where that 200 point figure comes into. That's the lion's share of this risk assessment. We go through with our policies and procedures. If you remember a year or so ago, we changed some policies and we added policies to add a few of these that we didn't have a formal policy written. We now do have that in our personnel policy. I am a licensed CPA. I do have a bachelor's and a master's degree for number 3. And then the number 4 are employees and elected officials required to have the annual commit to writing that we have a statement of ethical behavior. We actually just sent that out again to everybody. We'll do that annually as well. Get them to sign that statement. It's not just a one-page statement once a year. We'd really try to incorporate a culture of ethics and have trainings constantly to make sure that people understand that, obviously we want people to behave ethically and above board so that we can maintain a high level of integrity and confidence to the citizens. Number 5 just talks about our annual trainings that we do every year. We do that with the Open and Public Meetings Acts and other trainings. Number 6, I do receive 40 hours a year. That's what I'm doing currently down here at St. George, is getting some CPE credits for my continuing professional education. And then 7, 8, and 9, we've talked about this in the past. A fraud hotline, an internal audit function, and an audit committee. With all these come extra costs. And if you look at the top here, you can see we are in the low status with the 335 score. In order to get to the very low, we'd have to do 2 of these 3 functions. The internal audit function would have to be an independent position that reports directly to an audit committee. It could not be staff. It couldn't be someone that reports to me. That'd be a conflict. It would need to be someone independent that would report directly to the audit committee board if we were to form that. And that committee would direct the internal audit on where to look, what to look for. The audit committee would also review the audit to report each year. So those are some of the functions. And then the fraud hotline, again, there would be some cost to that. The question would be, who would we want that to report to? Would it be, a city attorney, to the city manager? Typically, if it's a fraud complaint, you want it to go to someone that could investigate that complaint. And so that's basically it. We have to do this each year. But yeah, we did receive a low rating, which is, in my opinion, very good. I will open it up to any questions that you may have.
It's fabulous. I remember going over this not too long ago, and you're like 5 more points up. So good job.
So I had a question. Is there a reason why you just can't advertise the Utah State Audit
Yes.
fraud
I asked
hotline?
Last year, I was asked last year. Yep.
Yeah, I do remember you asking that last year. I will look into that and see. I think that's something we possibly could do, and that's something that residents can call today and do.
Yeah, that's
If
what
we
I'm
were to
saying
do
is
that, yeah, we could probably promote it on our website, promote it different places. So
that's what I would recommend. The same recommendation we made last year is I would recommend that we just, because that's what they would do now. It's no additional expense. You would put up posters around City Hall saying, hey, if you suspect fraud, then call this number. And like I say, I'm not after this just to get 20 points, but I do think that's just a good practice.
okay, yeah, I will definitely look into that and
Thank you.
see what we can do.
Fortunately, just 20 points doesn't bump us into the next group, but
Yeah, like it's not about the points. It's just about
yeah.
Improvement. It's ever improving. Let's do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Steve.
Okay, thank you.
Paul, we're going to talk about the Parks Advisory Committee and an alternate.
Sure. So this was brought up at the last meeting that you were hoping to add an alternate to the Parks Advisory Committee. So this is language that would allow that. Well, the memo, I guess, covers pretty much all the bases, but essentially it would be a person who could serve in any district. They wouldn't vote unless there was an absence or a resignation from the board.
Any questions, council?
So are we, this would be just one position?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. That was my question.
Can we place this amendment on the consent calendar?
I say yes.
Yep. Let's do it.
So can we put it on a consent agenda if Seth's not here? I guess that's just me wondering.
Oh.
I mean,
There's a quorum here.
okay.
So Seth has the ability to take it off, so I think.
Yeah. Okay, then sure.
Okay. Cassie, would you put that on a consent calendar? Boy, let's talk about town hall meetings.
Okay, yeah. After the last town hall meeting this past summer, there was discussion about maybe doing it more often. So we just wanted to put this on the agenda. We talked about doing November, a town hall meeting sometime in November. And so just wanted to open up to see if there's any topics that the council or would want to have. We can do specific topics, or you can have it more open-ended. It's kind of, just wanted to get it out here and discuss it with you.
I think I'd like to do a town hall on parks.
Funding a park.
Be it funding a park, or maybe they want to focus on fixing parks we have, or I think it'd be good to just open it up and say, look, here's kind of where we are on this. We have priorities that we need to decide on. And one of them is, and we've talked about them, buying land, fixing parks we have, really pushing for the regional park. All of those require a commitment that it would be good to educate the public on.
That they don't happen for free. Yep.
Yeah, naturally. Yep. So that would be one of my recommendations.
I think that would be better placed after the first of the year, don't you? Because then we're going into spring where more people are going to be thinking about it and talking about it.
But it can help prioritize what happens in the next year.
We thought it would be good to have it in November before the strategic planning meeting, so that we knew what the public were feeling on a couple of issues.
So what are the issues you had thought of? Did you have any specifics? Yes.
One of the items that was talked about a little bit at the last meeting was just a kind of an open forum on what the priorities of the city should be, and invite the public to tell the council, have an opportunity to address the council on what they think the priorities should be for the city.
And this would be after the election, so we should also have the newly minted elected officials there as well, I'm guessing.
They could be in the meeting.
Yeah, they wouldn't be sworn in, but they wouldn't
be sworn in, but It could be an introduction of your new elected officials.
It could be, and it could be a call to action for what I think Brody's got a good point. What, as we move into a different era, whether it's one person or others, what do they want to see change in the city? What direction do they want it to take?
Yeah, I think that'd be interesting.
Perfect timing for that question.
Anything else?
That's also something we can do through survey. If you want probably more. The only problem with that is I guess with a survey, you can have just an open-ended question, that says, what should the city's priorities be? And then they can just type in. I mean, you'll tend to get,
Yeah, that's the problem. You get 50 answers and different answers. And do you really come up with a theme based on what you get?
Not usually.
Well, but it is more reflective. I mean, in a public meeting, you get, 20, 30.
Yeah, because only a handful of people come.
Yeah.
Costco.
Maybe we just have one main, maybe we just have one main idea and then we leave the rest open to questions and conversation. Because I think there are so many times when we have stilted discussions because we have Open Meetings Act and limited time. So what if we just say, we'll be discussing this for the first portion and then after that it's questions.
But is that, now, I'm just posing a question here, but is that legal with the Open Meetings Act? Because we would then be discussing something that we didn't advertise.
Well, except that you're advertising that questions will be asked and answered. I mean,
asking the question.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. So under the Open Meetings Act, items that are raised by a member of the public can be discussed by a body at the discretion of the presiding authority, but no final action can be taken on any of those things discussed.
The no vote is the only thing. That's what they teach in the Open Meetings Act.
So we could do that. And that might bring out, you never know what's going to happen between now and then, if there might not be something that's really on the mind of the public. And it's just like what just happened recently with Utopia coming up again. And we had a lot of misinformation going on out in social media. And we just haven't had the opportunity to really sit down and say, no, these things are right, this is wrong. And, so I think I would like to leave a lot of it up to what's on their minds.
Okay, Brody, do you have enough direction there, you think?
Well, I've got parks, I've got what should city priorities be, and then I've got an open Q&A. That's what I've heard.
Parks ought to be after the first of the year, because then we're talking about what we're going to do in the spring, and we can't really do anything until we approve the next budget anyway.
But you have to have a priorities meeting at the first year for the council. So if you kind of know what the residents want, then you can prioritize it. Just saying, but
I agree with what everybody's saying.
Okay.
Those all sound like.
Well, Brody and I'll sit down and we'll share the agenda of that for you as we go along. Okay, let's talk about future agenda items for these meetings. Anybody have anything, or we're on a report on anything that you participate in? Jordan, let's start with you.
I actually have a go back on the last one. I think it would be worthwhile to have a report on, in some of these items, the upcoming projects. Like, how we have our 5-year plans. I think it would be nice to just kind of flash up there. Look, here's our 5-year plans for roads and parks. And maybe if someone says, hey, you know what? I don't feel like this is right. I feel like this needs to be I would actually like to hear that.
That's an interesting idea.
You know what? Along those lines, there is so much information. Like, when we found out that if you let a road get past the point of no return, it's 20 times more. That is such an important fact to know, because we'll have these people that are saying, you just redid the road again. Why are you giving them another blacktop or a seal coat or something? And we're just falling to pieces. And And so I think I would love to have, gosh, even if we just had each department come up with 2 or 3 crucial facts to know and just share those. I think that information being spread would be wonderful, because there's so many things that people don't know that
I think it's a good
inform
idea.
them.
And so maybe in one of them, like when we do the parks, we show, here's our parks plan. At another one of these, we say, hey, here's some cool road things, and here's our roads plan.
Yep.
And I
That's
think
great.
I feel like when you can advertise there's actually a plan, you get a lot more patience and understanding when you just say, we'll get to you eventually, just trust us.
I think you'll also find that your actual conversation that night will be a lot more constructive instead of leaving it all open-ended.
Yeah.
Because you've said, okay, well, here's what we're doing. So it's partly educational, partly, we want your suggestions about this, but if it's all open-ended, you're not going to get a direction.
I agree. That's a great idea. And we could even have there be a little bit of information. We have a lot of comments where they'll say the schools can't handle the kids. And it would be really good to be able to say they actually have a plan as well. I mean, everybody has a plan.
Well, we'd have to have the district present that, because I don't know what the plan is half the time.
But what that's so true. But it's just important to be able to say this isn't a city making decision. We don't do anything, have anything to do with schools or something like that. And that kind of information is said every now and then, but I think it just goes a long way if you can give just some bullet points. It doesn't even have to be long conversations. Just, here are 3 things we want you to know about this. Here are 3 things we want you to know about this department. And I think those are things I would have loved to have realized, and it would have helped me understand.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think Brody and I've heard enough that we can put together an agenda and we'll bring it back to you.
Great.
Let's talk about future agenda items for this body.
I don't have anything specific. One thing I did, is this also time for council member reports?
Yes.
So I wanted to say, I want to thank the Rush. So I'm now the chair of the Syracuse Elementary Community Council, and we reached out. Every year they go to classic skating, and all of our Syracuse residents drive out to classic and go roller skating there, and they have a great time. I reached out to the Rush this time and asked them if they would be willing to give our local schools the same deal. And they said yes. And they also did discounted passes for the schools. And in talking to Ed, I asked, hey, can we extend this to the rest of the schools in Syracuse? And he said, you know what? I think that would be a great idea. And so he has offered to do that same deal. And I can send him the details. But I know a lot of us serve on different schools boards. If you would kind of pass that information along, I'd really like to try and keep our Syracuse residents, let them come experience the businesses in Syracuse. And like I say, Ed is okayed that. Also need the details. But as much as we can, I would love to try and keep all of our kids, let them recreate here in Syracuse and have a good time in the city.
Great.
Jordan, would you pass that on to Seth?
Yep, I will pass that along. I'll send an email with those details out to the council.
Okay.
If you guys wouldn't mind passing that along to the schools that you serve with, I'd appreciate it.
Great.
Okay.
That's
anything else?
And I think you've already heard of the report from the Parks Committee. I didn't send out a different email because I knew you were getting it all in the same packet. So, yeah, thank you.
Dave?
Monday night at Founders Park, if you have time, there will be a orchestra concert with some wonderful music, including surprise symphony, variations on chopsticks, and some fun, lighthearted music in the park.
Can we pipe that to our Meet the Candidates event? Because that would be awesome.
Oh, that's right.
What day was that again, Dave?
Conflict with that. That's the 4th.
That made me very sad when everything moved to that night and I found out that I wouldn't be able to participate in that orchestra concert because they do an amazing job.
They do.
Mhm.
Corinne, do you have anything?
I not at the, well, actually, excuse me, backing up. I attended with you, Mayor, the Clearfield Job Corps community relations meeting, and they're finally, yay, getting students back on campus. Because of COVID, they haven't been allowed federally to do so, and they're finally getting and these, you need to know, these are almost all local Utah kids. Okay, these are not like a lot of them were coming from Texas prior, but now it's all local. And even prior to COVID, they were because of the demand in the area, they were now not having the kids come from Texas any longer, and they used to have some from California, but they actually haven't had them for quite a while. So one way or another, they're finally getting them there, and they're doing really well. Jess Bigler actually gave a great presentation to them about being, resilient and helping them, with their mental health for their students at this time, especially since, by the way, through the entire thing of COVID, they've actually had several homeless young adults living there the entire time that have not been allowed to leave campus. Can you imagine? Anyway, they're doing really, really well. They their parent company is MTC, and they're also partnering with United Way, and they're all very committed to continue to help with CTC and illuminations as well. So it was a really great little meeting, and we're grateful that they're friendly to get going again, because there's a lot of kids that are low income, and they're not kids, I should say they're young adults, they're out of high school, but there's so many great opportunities for them to be able to get this education that they wouldn't ever be able to otherwise, and it's breaking the cycle of poverty. So I'm just kudos to them.
Thank you, Corinne. Lisa?
I don't have anything. COVID took me out of the loop. I had to cancel my life for several weeks. So I'm happy to say that I'm recovered except for a constant cough. So I apologize for this constantly. But anyway, I had to miss a lot of meetings. So looking forward to getting back into life again.
Glad you're feeling better.
Glad you're back. Glad you're back. All right, council, I'd like to entertain a motion to go back to our business meeting.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're now back in our business session.
Motion to go into closed session.
I have a motion to go into closed session. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mayor,
Aye.
Yes.
can I just discuss the staff that needs to be here? So it's going to be Robert. Well, basically everybody but Garrett and Aaron.
I just sent the link on the Teams channel too. I'll send it to the department heads as well.
Everybody but Garrett and Aaron.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So are we leaving?
We're leaving.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, log back in. Okay.